And the best bits from Off the Ball, all in a 10-minute podcast.
Oh, sweaty palms. Of course, you guys know what it's like, but that was nervy, yeah.
The OTB Brief, online every morning from 7 a.m. on offtheball.com, the Go Loud app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
And a very good morning to you. It is Tuesday, the 5th of May. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Ger and Eoin and Owen Sheehan with you here every morning from 7:30 all the way through until 10. A specially extended show for the lock-in. And I hope you're doing very well after the bank holiday weekend. We have a very busy show for you. Here's what's coming up. Going to bring you Andy Lee's top 5 boxing movies of all time. Bring you through the sports pages. Lots and lots of stuff happening. Big responses, obviously, to the government's plan to get us out of all this and what it means for the various sports that we'll be covering. Half the GAA thinks this is great, half the GAA thinks a little bit early, need to see some details. So we'll get to the details of what they think in the sports pages at 8 o'clock. Talking Spanish football with Dermot Corrigan, where there's a very clear roadmap to a return to play. We'll get the examination of how and why La Liga is hurtling towards, inside the next 6 weeks, they think there's going to be football. So we'll see exactly what's going to happen with that. Oliver Dingley is our off the couch today. He's going to show us a little bit about his workout that's gone live this afternoon. Of course, an Olympic diver who has represented Ireland in the Olympics and was, of course, hoping to go to Tokyo this year. Fingers crossed he's going to be able to go to Tokyo next year as well. And then Off the Bull is our continuing brilliant podcast series about The Last Dance, which is the Michael Jordan documentary, which turns out the whole country seems to be watching on Netflix at the moment, because as soon as it gets released, it's trending number 1 in the charts on Netflix. If you've got any views on any of that stuff, you can WhatsApp us 087 9180 180. That's 087 9180 180 is the number to WhatsApp, and we'll put your comments to the rest of the country in a couple of minutes' time. Now, though, let's bring you the first bit here. It's Andy Lee's top 5 boxing movies of all time. Have a look.
I feel like I'm opening myself up for a lot of scrutiny here. But the truth is, I don't watch a lot of boxing movies. I wouldn't, just because it's boxing, I wouldn't go in and say, oh, I have to see that film, you know. If anything, it would kind of turn me away from it.
It's because there's very few that are actually any good?
Yeah, a lot of them just tend to play on the cliches, and I don't know, and I guess it's kind of hard to suspend your, the reality or disbelief, whatever it is. But when it is good and when it's done right, it's definitely the best sport in terms of
movies.
Yeah, movies.
Yeah. Culture in general.
Cinematic. I think and maybe that's just because anyone can relate to being in a fight, and and then what you have to do to go through that, I think.
You wanted to talk a bit about some of the ones that didn't work. So here's Jake Gyllenhaal in Southpaw.
yeah, in an orthodox stance. That was enough for me. I seen the preview. I looked at this and I said, oh, Southpaw, standing orthodox. You didn't even switch it on, but no, there's a whole lot of probably good films, and I'm probably doing them a disservice that I didn't actually watch. Like, I know Vinny Pazienza had a recent biography out, it's called Bleed for This. And he's got an incredible story. He was paralysed and fought his way back, trained himself and fought his way back.
It was the Miles Teller movie, wasn't it?
Yeah, Miles Teller. Did you see it?
Yeah, it was pretty good. We had him on the show, actually, Vinny Pazienza. Very interesting story. Very kind of like a three-dimensional guy.
Yeah, character,
Yeah, almost like a Rocky Marciano type in terms of the 3D nature you get of him as a character and as a man, which sometimes often makes these movies so great. As in, have very obvious flaws with characters, which ultimately these are movies about boxing rather than a boxing movie to a certain extent,
And that's one of my I have On the Waterfront, number 3, I think. That's questionable. Is that a boxing movie?
We always include it in this top 10 sports films.
Just the performance of Brando. It's and it's really and boxing. I guess it is boxing is the hot driver, really.
Well, that hinge scene in the whole thing where he confronts his brother.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most famous scenes in cinema.
Yeah,
that scene in the back of the car where he finally has the courage to confront his brother. And for a lot of boxers, that's so on the nose because you have these relationships with a manager, or in his case, his brother, which even makes it worse, and they're telling you what to do all the time. And a lot of fighters, they need to be told what to do. You know, they just want guidance. You know, and all they want to do is train and think and fight. And they kind of you put your trust in somebody, and you kind of have to go with them blindly, no matter what they say. And then, if it comes to the point, and even if you have a suspicion that they don't have your best interests at heart, it's very hard to confront that. You know, it's like that teacher-pupil kind of dynamic. And that's why that scene is so powerful.
It's employer as well. Like, I mean, that's obviously an allegory for everything that's going on in the background with the workers who are getting completely ridden by in the dockyards. It's like the little man, no matter how hard he tries, always gets screwed.
Yeah.
And, like, that scene is iconic. And, like, you know, you can kind of make the case that that's even better than your number one. I mean, we can do this in reverse order.
It's very hard to put any of these on the list, and there's so many other films that I didn't put on the list, like Fat City, which is, you know, it's a great book, and it's a really good film as well.
I don't know Fat City at all. What's that?
It's a film with Stacey Cheech, he would have been like a Brando in his day himself, kind of a, you know, like a rebel kind of an actor, but it also has a young Jeff Bridges. You know, he's about 18 in it, so it's really his start.
It's got a 100% record on Rotten Tomatoes.
Really?
Yeah. I know it's only got like about 21 reviews or something, but still 21 out of 21 ain't bad.
Yeah.
It's one of the only movies I've seen that's got
like, I haven't put, like, what really what kept me, not what started for me as a child, but like was my fantasy, the Rocky movies, you know, the Rocky franchise. I haven't put that on the list, which is probably wrong because that did so much for boxing.
A Club of Lang here.
I know, yeah, and it's such a cultural, you know, reference point now that Rocky Balboa.
Creed was decent.
Yeah, no,
Creed 2 announced yesterday.
The trailer. I didn't get past the first 15 minutes of Creed.
Right.
No, I just, whatever it was about, I just, nah. I don't know, like, you know, you get... Like,
Tony Belly didn't do it for you?
No, you give it, like, you know, this day and age, you don't have to sit through, like years ago, if you've committed to a film, you're going to sit down and watch it, but like, this day and age, there's so much good stuff that you can just, you know, skip it over, you know.
I don't know, I enjoyed, look, I mean, I watched Creed.
No, everyone speaks well of it, like, you know.
I didn't sit down and watch it, though. I kind of was wandering around doing other stuff and going, I'll come in and watch this scene, and then I went out and watched it. Like, I wasn't kind of sitting there glued to it. Yeah. But it was passable, I thought.
I must give it a second chance.
Maybe that's...
I don't know, I just...
my tolerance for that is pretty low. So Rocky, I remember I saw Rocky 4 in cinema. The other Rockies I've only ever kind of seen after the fact, but like, that was kind of peak Cold War class.
Yeah.
It's just complete
great. The training montage, you know, where Rocky's doing the very old school and Ivan Drago's going and doing all the modern techniques and stuff. And it was class. And then the death of Apollo Creed, and, you know, it had all those emotional triggers that you wanted to see, you know.
Yeah.
And my personal favorite was Rocky 3. It's probably not the best of the Rocky movies, but, you know, he got to fight Hulk Hogan, and he fought Club of Lang, you know, B.A. Brockus or whatever, you know, Mr. T, a.k.a. And I thought to me, that was my favourite, you know.
Why?
He goes back and he trains with Apollo, doesn't he? You know, he goes back to, like, the black, tough gym and learns how to he learns how to box, really, you know, and gets rhythm and the montage of that training montage where he's in the gym and he looks really stupid at the start, can't even skip rope, and then he kind of conquers that, you know, I don't know. When you're a kid, I haven't probably seen it in, I don't know, 20 years or so, you know.
Just like you and the Kronk.
Yeah, that's, you know, it's kind of, I think it, like, I heard somewhere that it was kind of based on the Kronk, the gym they used.
Okay,
you know,
right.
But, it was really good film.
Let's go back to your top 5 and actually talk about these then. So, we can stick that up there. Number 5 is Cinderella Man. Number 4 is Somebody Up There Likes Me. Number 3 is On the Waterfront. Number 2 is Journeyman. And number 1 is Raging Bull. So let's talk about Journeyman, because this is, you've got a personal involvement with this.
Yeah, it's like, it's only been released earlier this year, and it was kind of limited release. And it's not a film a lot of people would have saw, but Paddy Considine, who wrote it, directed it, and acts in it, I would know him personally. He's been to a few of my fights, and there was a chance we could have got him on the show. It just didn't work out, so we will get him in again just to ask him about, you know, get it from the horse's mouth. But I knew he was making a boxing film, so, you know, he started getting in touch with boxers, and we had some exchanges, you know, back and forth, and he'd come to a couple of my fights. But I went to see this film after I retired, and I couldn't be, like, when I left the cinema, I was so happy that I was retired because I couldn't imagine being in my position as an aging boxer, having watched this film. And you know, Joe sent me the link of Michael Bisping.
Yeah.
He referenced the movie and his decision to retire.
He said he got on a flight, watched the film, got off the flight, and retired. I was like,
I know.
So just explain the film, will you? Because
it centers around this character called Maddie Burton, and in a lot of ways, like when I watched the film, why I was so affected by it, there were so many parallels to my life and career and how my life could have went had a fight gone the wrong way for me, especially later on when I had knockdowns against Jackson and against Quillen and Saunders, you know?
Yeah.
He was WBO middleweight champion. He was married with a young daughter, and you know, that's just my life in a nutshell. And like, he suffers after a fight, he wins the fight. I don't want to give any spoilers now, but he comes home and starts to get a really bad headache, and it turns out he has swelling on the brain, and he has to suffer through, like, and deal with that, you know, and come to terms with that. And the film is so on the, like, he got so many of the little details, like, he really did his research, because so many of the little details, even down to like I was watching, like, you know, when I was watching the film, I was like, look at that, you know, I was just giving my wife a little nudge, and she would have seen it all. Like, after he wins a fight, his wife comes to give him a hug, and he has to pull away because he's so sore.
Yeah.
And like, I've never seen that in a boxing film, but that's why the way it is, because you can barely breathe. Your body's so battered that to expand your rib cage is, you know, it really hurts.
Yeah.
So like, all the small details are right, and like, he used a lot of like boxing extras, a lot of boxing journalists in the film, and it just and coincidentally, Brendan Ingle, who recently passed away, plays his father in the film.
Right. Okay.
It's a really nice touch there, you know. It's like, another thing, like, it shows he goes back and watches footage of when he won the title, and what they do after the fight is they just go back to a room and celebrate. You know, it's not a big, just amongst themselves.
Yeah.
He's with his dad and they're all taking photos, and I have the exact same footage of me after I won the world title. So it was just so many things that I was like, oh, this is like a parallel. I know it's probably totally personal, but like, I'm not ashamed to admit it, like, I must have cried maybe 3 times during the film.
Right.
And I can't remember the last time I cried other than that, you know, for major things that happened to me. But the film is really emotive, and it will stay with you for a long time.
That's class. Well, hopefully we'll all get a chance to see it. Do you know if there's plans for it to...
I think it'll be re-released. I'm sure it'll come on DVD. It will be out soon. I think it might be finished as cinema release now. He was due to come over. I'd seen it in the Dublin Film Festival, so it should be out for a wider release soon, or a DVD release soon.
Apparently it's out on DVD, Joseph was just saying, so hopefully it hits Netflix or we can get it soon, because it's called Journeyman and it sounds great.
Yeah, it's a really good film, yeah.
Somebody up there likes me.
Yeah, that's just a personal favourite. I really
called it the hipster's choice.
No, I thought it's a great film. I loved it since I was about this big, so, you know, maybe I'm a bun. But it's, you know, just the performance of Paul Newman, and, you know, just the scenes of New York, the Lower East Side. It's the Rocky Graciano story, and, you know, how, he, like, in his own life, he'd been in trouble as a youth, had an abusive father, and then comes out, picks up boxing. He was getting in trouble with the law and kind of had a knack for it, and went on to be middleweight world champion. So,
because there is another movie called Somebody Up There Likes Me. It's a really bad Nick Offerman movie from 2012, like, just such a popcorn American comedy flick. So I'm glad it is the boxing version of that, which I did assume. But it, like, the Paul Newman angle is, like, this essentially launched his career to a certain extent. It was one of his first feature films.
And like I could watch him in anything. Like, in terms of, just this happens to be a boxing movie, but I think he's like one of the greatest actors of all time. Like, when you look at his catalogue of films, he's as good as they get.
Yeah. I didn't realise that Graziano was a contemporary of Jake LaMotta, that they were actually in juvie together.
Yeah, they would have been around New York at the same time, you know. And,
and they both fight Sugar Ray Robinson, and a key figure in both their careers.
Yeah, he would have been, and a few other ones, like Tony Gennaro and Tony Zale, they would have fought all this around the same time, so that was a truly great period for middleweights. But, like, there is a connection between, like, and there's another connection. There's a guy called Kevin Mahan who lives in New York, and I became friends with him when I would have been living in New York around 2009 to 2011, that kind of time. This guy would come to the gym and just watch me train, and I never, like, would always be quiet. So eventually I would say, well, what's your name? And blah, blah, we got talking. And I eventually come to realise, after knowing him for about 2 or 3 months that he played Tony De Niro in Raging Bull.
All right.
Yeah, and he used to knock around with Tony Graziano and Tony Graziano's brother.
Right.
And so there is like, he comes out. This guy was from West Virginia, an Irish American, never boxed in his life, but had a dream of being a boxer. Moved to New York at 17, was sleeping on the streets, and ended up training in Customato's gym. And wasn't really a fighter, wasn't really much of a boxer. But one day he just watched Taxi Driver, and he said he could relate to that film, being in New York and being alone. And then one day he walks Martin Scorsese, Jake LaMotta, and Rob De Niro, and they say, "Who's that kid in the ring?" And he said, "That's Kevin Mann." He said, "Well, I want him to be trained with De Niro for the fight." And they eventually give him the part of Tony De Niro. People remember because he's the one that takes the beat, and he says, "He ain't pretty anymore."
Yeah.
That's him. That's Kevin. So that's my connection to
That's pretty
Raging
class.
Bull.
Yeah.
But this is just, without boxing, it's a great film. This is one of the all-time great films of all time.
It makes all the top 10 lists of all top 10 movies of all time very regularly, and from time to time it kind of surges to number 1 depending on who's making the list.
You got with De Niro and Scorsese, it's a winning team, and then with Paul Schrader, the writer, it's a great, it's a great film. I can't really say enough about it, but just the performances and what he put his body through, losing the weight, gaining weight, and just how he embodied that figure, and how he captured Jake LaMotta. I think Jake LaMotta, sometimes it happens that you become more famous because of not what you actually did in your career. People probably know Jake LaMotta more so because of this. He was a subject of the film.
Definitely, yeah. Without question.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the New York angle just on all of this, and kind of how that's so inextricably linked to a lot of these movies. And I think I recall Scorsese talking about On the Waterfront a few years ago. I'm not sure, was it Inside the Actors Studio or something like that, where he starts to talk about On the Waterfront, as you say, not just a boxing movie, as a movie that informed his view of New York in a cinematic sense, that it was wait a minute, this society that I grew up in could actually be depicted in such a 3D way. It's not kind of, stereotypically one-dimensional. This is something that kind of, I look at that character and I'm like, I know that guy, that's the guy that grew up down the street from me, or I know that guy, and it was accurate. It was kind of the thing that informed him when you look at his movies about the city, and kind of so inspirational when it comes to one of the greatest directors and his view of New York City, that to call them boxing films is almost doing them an injustice.
Yeah. There's so much, and that film, the screenplay is done by Bud Schulberg, who's a boxing writer himself. I would have met his son when I lived in New York through George Kimball.
Right.
Yeah, so there's a lot of connections, and it is a small world in boxing. And boxing and movies, boxing and the movie business, they kind of flirt together. They kind of, they
There's the glamour from both of them.
Yeah, I always say this, and it's such a cliche, all boxers want to be actors and all actors want to be boxers. They kind of have this weird appreciation, and it's kind of weird to see the two worlds meet, and I want to be like you, and the other guy's I want to be like you, know. But there are so many and I guess there's a lot of parallels in that. When you go into the ring, you have to be somebody else. You have to act, and you have to perform, and it's a similar state, I guess, to be a good actor. You have to become somebody else.
Yeah, you did stuff in the Fringe Festival, didn't you?
Yeah, I had dabbled a little bit in acting, and I did a bit in the theatre festival. I was in a play called Chekhov's First Play, and it was really great. I was more nervous before I walked out onto that stage than I was for any of my fights across my life.
What was your role?
I was basically playing myself in a hyper kind of a hyper realistic version of myself, and I wasn't saying my own, I had to learn lines and recite lines, and it was daunting, but I have to admit the buzz I got after it, I was actually it was nearly better than most of my fights, because most fights you win and you're like, I was suspecting.
Also, you don't get your head beaten off you.
Yeah, as well, yeah.
Somebody can give you a hug afterwards and you're not flinching.
Yeah, but I'd prefer to take a beating and go up there and choke or forget a line. I'd prefer to take a few shots in the face.
Was it something addictive?
No, I enjoyed it.
Would you do it again?
No, I don't know. I shouldn't be revealing all this, but I actually am doing a part-time course in Bow Street. Yeah, in Bow Street, acting in drama school. Yeah, it's in Smithfield, and my wife signed me up as a Christmas present. She knew that I would enjoy it. So
career guidance.
Yeah, she was probably like, come on now. This was before I retired, and she was like, yeah. But so that's filling up a lot of my time, I'm doing that 2 days a week, and yeah.
Who are you watching?
I'm watching everything. We actually watched the scene with On the Waterfront where Marlon Brando is where he's talking to the girl and he's trying to chat her up, and like it's like you said, like what Scott says, he says, like, you can just relate to him because he's just like a young New York kind of a guy, and I've met those guys so many times. Like, I'd seen the film a lot when I was younger, but just rewatching it recently, and he's walking down the street with the girl, he's rapping to her, he's trying to, trying to anything he can to get to, and she takes off a glove, and he takes a glove, and like he's on the swings, and he puts the glove on, and it's like, I was like, whoa, that was like a real kind of sexual innuendo, like, and I'm not sure if he, like, improvised that or whatever it was, but like, great film.
Yeah.
yeah, great film.
And have you any other, was there any TV experience or any other acting?
I don't want to reveal too much. It doesn't really, I'm being part, like, I don't want to be part of the cliche of the boxer who goes into acting now, like, so I just keep stump.
You haven't got an IMDb page yet, no? That's the next step.
No.
We can set it up, you don't worry. But John Duddy's doing it. He's
John Duddy's, yeah, and a lot of boxers do try to go into acting. And I said it's probably an easy transition, because even within Bow Street and the course that I'm doing, it's all about preparation and ownership, and it's a very, like, I can just relate everything to boxing and how it relates to boxing.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Yeah. It's very transferable skills.
I know I've probably skipped a lot, like, it's not like When We Were Kings is probably one of the greatest.
That's the thing.
Is it's a documentary. I don't know.
It ruins boxing movies, I think, a little bit after. The films that come after that have to be absolutely sensational, because When We Were Kings is like a high watermark for documentary making, for boxing, for history, for storytelling. It's like it's the perfect film. You can't there's no flaws in that. And like, I saw that in the cinema, so I don't know if I'm ever going to have the same experience again, where you're just like, holy shit, that's amazing.
Like, you should definitely put that back on in the Lighthouse at some point, maybe the next anniversary of Ali or something, because, as you say, missing the opportunity to see that in the cinema was one of the biggest regrets.
There's for a lot, boxing movies kind of come along in spurts, where you get like 5 boxing movies in the space of a year, and then there'll be 2 or 3 years where there won't be a boxing movie. And I always thought there was room for a real, true. I think there is, but as far as I'm concerned, Journeyman really nails it on the head, the head, in terms of all the small details, and the boxing. The boxing itself, like, that's one thing I'm always critical of, and like The Fighter is a great film, but the boxing is like, they did get a lot of the details right in terms of the ring and the shorts he wore and some of the work, and Christian Bale's performance as Dickie Eklund is sensational, but in terms of a film and a boxing film, I like. The boxing was just, Mark Wahlberg, I think his technique wasn't good enough, and his body didn't look, like, you can see, you have to have, the boxer's body was too muscular, and same with Jake Gyllenhaal in Southpaw, like, and I heard all these stories about how he was going through this training regime, and he was training in Church Street in New York, but it looks like to me, he was on juice. Yeah. It looks to me, because you can tell the type of muscle it is, that it's not from boxing, it's more, look, you can see it there, he looks more like a power lifter or something, I wouldn't say.
As opposed to a fighter.
Yeah.
Although a lot of fighters are starting to look like that these days. And do people come to you and ask you about, like, can you give us a bit of guidance about this? Yeah,
well, I would have talked to Paddy Considine a little bit about that kind of thing, and I know he came to a lot of fights, and he did pick up a lot from going to the fights, in terms of, even in Journeyman, like, he uses Kugan Cassius for his interview, and, got a lot of the extras from there. And there's a film actually being made by Kieran Cassidy, who's a young Dublin director. It's called Tomato Can. Yeah. And it's a great story. It's a short film about a kind of a washed-up boxer who gets stuck with his daughter, minding his daughter for the day of a fight, and he's a journeyman, like, he's a tomato can. It's a great film. It's going to be a great film. It's not out yet. And they got Thomas McCartney, who's a Belfast boxer, to play the role. I wasn't available, so.
Cass is a genius. He's made some absolutely brilliant radio documentaries. And so that's.
There you go.
Was he actually?
Actually, Jake Gyllenhaal.
That's Jake Gyllenhaal, yeah.
It's not. It doesn't even look like him.
Yeah, it looks.
Seine Linke ist seine starkste Waffe. So that's obviously the German poster. But, like, holy shit.
I haven't seen it. Is he a southpaw in the movie, or is it just a poster?
He is. I haven't watched it either. I saw the trailer, and, like, his wife gets killed in a press conference, it seems, and I was like, yeah,
no thanks.
I don't need to watch this,
So somebody threw a water bottle at her or something.
I got Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I've queued up on Netflix. So
right. Okay. Yeah, that's a bit of a grim start.
Okay, so Raging Bull's number 1, Journeyman, On the Waterfront, Somebody Up There Likes Me, Cinderella Man, we haven't talked about that. Russell Crowe said that for a screen actor, being in a boxing movie is like being in Hamlet. He said it's his favourite role. So Cinderella Man is J.J. Braddock, is that it?
Yeah, J.J. Braddock and James J. Braddock. And it's a story of, set in the Depression. It's a true story and about a man's struggle and his perseverance, and he gets a shot, and like a lot of fighters, and like, it's related to my own, like, gets a shot out of the blue and kind of takes it, when he's down to his lowest ebb, and takes the chance. And like, there's a foot, like, not a foot, but a bit of trivia, like, he did very well, even though he won the title. He defended against Joe Louis shortly after, and he only had 2 fights after that. He negotiated for himself to earn 10% of Joe Louis's future earnings.
Right.
For the next decade. Right. After the fight, so he kind of he did a great job, and his manager's played by Paul Giamatti. I think his name's something Gould or something like that. But he has a great part, and he's a great actor, Paul Giamatti, and they're dynamic. So yeah, it's definitely up there. Like that, and The Fighter would be on even terms, I think. And like there's so many. Requiem for a Heavyweight with Anthony Quinn, and that's just boxing has always kind of been, I think.
Kieran Cunningham was talking to us, he's tweeting us about the Emil Griffith movie that Lenny Abramson is working on. He's bought the rights to Donald McRae's book. Yeah, I spoke to Lenny Abramson about that. Like, you asked me to, I forgot, yeah. I had dinner with Lenny Abramson, and he was just asking about boxing and what it's like, and the book is a really, really good book. It's
an incredible story.
Yeah, it sounds like. And I'd met Emil Griffith a lot of times.
Had you?
Yeah, in New York. He would towards the end of his life, he would have been not down and out, but living from week to week or whatever, he wouldn't have had the most affluent lifestyle towards the end, and he would have always hung around the New York scene and been at fights. And I always wondered, it was a bit not that it's a lot, I always wondered why people were a little bit in the boxing circles were a little bit I didn't know he was gay. I didn't know he was gay, and I guess it was an open secret in boxing or whatever it was. And I was so thrilled to meet him, and I'd always chat to him. And this was Emil Griffin, it was an all-time great Hall of Fame fighter. I think he's won 5 world titles in different divisions. And
there's still homophobia in boxing, really, isn't there?
There is, but more so back then, and more so then.
And from the older guys, more.
Older guys, yeah, they were always kind of standoffish with him, and I always wondered why there wasn't such more of a bigger deal. And it wasn't until after, I read the book and I realised, I didn't know he was gay, and I wouldn't have made a difference, but, then it kind of made sense, it kind of just clicked, but...
Did you ever talk to him? So, for people who are unfamiliar, Emil Griffith killed somebody in the ring live on national television. It's like when boxing is still on every Saturday evening, and it's millions and millions and millions and millions of people are watching Saturday night, 8 o'clock. He kills a guy in the ring, and the guy he kills in the ring is a guy who in the build-up to the fight, had accused him of being gay publicly, and Griffith had said, did Griffith say I was going to kill you?
Yeah, he
was definitely I'll kill you, and then he does kill him.
Yeah, and it affected him for the rest of his career, and I know the film will be being made soon, but there's a great documentary on it called Man on Fire, and if you can watch, I think it's on YouTube, you can watch it, and it's in parts on YouTube, and it's really that's really an affecting,
Did you talk to him about that?
I never talked to him about that, I'm not going to just...
Oh, you killed a guy in the ring.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure he was trying to, he's been living with it and trying not to remind himself of it every day, but...
But he was into fashion as well, that's the other thing.
Yeah, he was a flamboyant character at the time, and he was married twice, I think, and has kids and stuff, but it wasn't until later on in life that he was kind of openly living as a gay man. But that incident where he killed a man in the ring, it affected him for the rest of his career. And he says in the documentary, I could never fully hit anybody after that, And his career does definitely take a downturn after that fight.
It's got to be near completion at this point. I've heard Abramson talking about that for years now at this point.
Yeah, I know
everything takes ages though.
It takes a while, yeah. So maybe he'll cast me as somebody in the...
Yeah.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
They spoke about your arm not being down beside your side. I mean, this is not Irish dancing.
OTB Sports Radio.
Basketball would have been my main game.
The brand new sports radio station from Off the Ball.
That's my point. Don't play for us if you're a proud Englishman.
Now broadcasting 24 hours a day. Live on the Go Loud app, Alexa.
You have a whole new world of possibilities.
Google Home, tune in, and offtheball.com/radio.
This is OTB Sports Radio. OTB AM.
Right, a very good morning to you. If you've just joined us, you've missed a brilliant discussion from Andy Lee about his top 5 boxing movies. You can catch that back on podcast. It's on the OTB Podcast Network and also wherever you get your podcasts. Best place for us is the Go Loud app or indeed on offtheball.com/podcast. It is bang on 8 o'clock on Tuesday, the 5th of May. Eoin Sheehan, good morning to you. How you doing?
Very well. How are you, Ger?
I'm very well. The last hour of our show this morning is another recap from yourself, Dermot Corrigan, Kieran Donaghy and Ronan Mullen about Last Dance. The Last Dance. I haven't seen the 2 episodes that were released on Sunday night just yet, so no spoilers, please, because, you know, I don't know, can you spoil a documentary where everybody knows exactly what's going to happen at the end? You probably can. There's probably some elements of it, but how did this weekend's play out and how did it compare with previous weekends?
I think the general mood out there is that this has been the best 2 episodes yet. I'm not sure about that, to be honest. I think that once you're watching it week after week, the whole glitzy nature of how brilliantly well produced the whole documentary is starts to wear off a little bit, that there is only so many montages you can watch that completely blow you away. They're still brilliant and they're still objectively fantastic. But after 3 weeks, certainly, you're certainly looking for something a little bit deeper, and on certain subjects, you want a little bit more. So a couple of subjects covered this week without any spoilers. Dream Team in 1992. One of the controversial subjects there was surrounding Isaiah Thomas and why he was left off the Dream Team. Not exactly sure if what we got was the full picture on the views of Michael Jordan towards Isaiah Thomas. But I think in Off the Bull, we recorded this yesterday, we've managed to go through Jack McCallum's book and pick out exactly what Jordan thought of that situation. And then we've got race relations covered as well in this week's edition of The Last Dance and the infamous Republicans Buy Sneakers 2 line and how that is covered in the documentary. They've got Barack Obama on the record saying he was a little bit disappointed with Jordan at the time. So that's a pretty big line. But as we'll get into a little bit later on, they could have done so much more there. Like he was a teammate of Craig Hodges, who was blackballed from the NBA during the 1990s, and they didn't ring him up for a phone call, which for me is a big omission. But outside of that, it's still ESPN at their best, and you've got brilliant 90s nostalgia. It's the arrival of Air Jordan, and there's a brilliant crappy old Converse ad featuring Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and just great 90s style nostalgia, if that's your thing.
Yeah, okay. In terms of the montages, how much of this stuff were you aware of? Like, had you binged on the genius of Jordan in the past to try and give yourself a sense of how good he was? Because for me, and for a lot of people who didn't watch that much of the early 90s basketball in particular, watching him defy gravity has been something that has been very important in reminding you of just how amazing he was.
It's a good point. I think we would have all been aware of it, but I don't think many people would have actually have sat down and watched these games in full, for example. So week 1, you had a montage especially dedicated to the 63-point game against the Boston Celtics. How many people have actually watched that game in full? I'm not so sure. I certainly hadn't. How many people would have actually watched the 1991 NBA Finals when Scottie Pippen goes on Magic Johnson and kills him? I certainly didn't. Even though I knew the detail, it was still brilliant seeing this thing played out. I certainly hadn't seen the footage that we get this week, which is the greatest game never seen before. Well, it had been seen before. It's not new footage, but the greatest game behind closed doors, for example, which was the game in Monte Carlo before the 1992 Olympics, where you had Team A versus Team B of Team USA going toe-to-toe, where Michael Jordan really stamped his foot down as the alpha male in that locker room. Like, they're the sort of things that we're getting, and we all know the lore of it, but speaking personally, I hadn't seen this fully played out in glorious footage with a sensational soundtrack, let's not forget. So maybe I'm just being miserable in 3 weeks and I'm like, I actually need to see more and I should shut up and actually just enjoy for what it is. But you made the point 2 weeks ago that it's not on OJ Made in America level. This was the week where they had the opportunity to do that, where they had a real societal conversation on their plate, and
I don't want to say they fudged it a little bit, but they could have done a lot more. Like, this is going to safely be an 8.5, 8.7 out of 10 documentary. This was the week where they had the opportunity to become a 9.2, 9.3, potentially even higher, and they missed that chance.
Yeah, I think that the fact that Jordan is so heavily involved along the way is always going to prevent that. And I think as well you have to do that from the start, which is exactly what they did. The opening scenes of OJ are essentially, you know, putting it in the context of the LA riots and actually the settling of the city of Los Angeles in the early part of the 20th century. So, like, you begin to understand that this is a massive, broad tapestry of sweep, and that's not happening with the basketball, which is just basketball in the 90s and the business of selling shoes. And, like, that's in itself really fascinating because at the centre is one of the greatest athletes that the world has ever seen. For me, that the thing was the game against Cleveland where, you know, the local press had written him off, and he goes over and calls the local press out and said, I took care of you after the first week because, you know, this guy predicted a sweep, this guy predicted that they would lose. And so on. But it's the last buzzer beater shot, and it's his jump after he makes it, which I think, I don't know if it's like, is it actually the logo for Air Jordan? But it looks like I've seen that photograph a million times. You know, it's Jordan up in the air, and I think he's telling everybody to go F themselves. And like, that was like, look at how high up he got because of the anger. It seems to be carrying him even higher than it would have been if it was just trying to dunk in the basket. And the ability to always score in the last minute. Like, I know the famous night out was him missing all those game-winning shots, but doesn't seem to have missed too many game-winning shots when there was an entire season or series on the line.
No, and I think if you refer to anything that Michael Jordan has done as the shot, the follow-up question is which one? Because it could be the Cleveland buzzer beater. It could be the one, the really famous one he did to win a national championship for North Carolina. There are multiple ones in the late 90s where Utah Jazz were put to the sword. That's blatant false advertising, if Nike are saying that. In clutch moments, Michael Jordan tends to fluff his lines from time to time. He doesn't. He's the one person you want with the ball in hand when it's coming down the line in a championship. So, yeah, like it's a Nike. Like, I'm not sure how much 90s fashion brings back nostalgic moments for you, Ger, but certainly we get into it in the pod a little bit. And Converse hasn't aged well, and whoever was in charge of Adidas at the time of Jordan's arrival on the scene, I'm not sure who that person is, but I'd love to hear their story now because they definitely got fired.
087 918 180 is the number if you want to talk about Last Dance, and you should really check out the podcast series. It's been a brilliant accompaniment listening to Jarlath and Kieran and Ronan talking to Owen every week after they've seen it. So it's great to go back and listen to the first two episodes of the podcast in advance of listening to the third one or watching the third series as well. 8:07 this morning. We should talk about the government roadmap. The government roadmap was obviously published on Friday, and there was a bit of a hoo-ha about the Taoiseach's performance on the Late Late Show. Ultimately, what it means for sport, I think, hasn't really been fully parsed in any kind of great detail just yet. I think there's still a significant concern about how a contact sport like GA might actually see us restoring games while at the same time social distancing is going to be in place.
Yeah, like there's obviously a sports section in the roadmap document, but there are a huge number of questions about how well thought out it's even been. Like, I know there are more important things, and maybe this was something that had to be published last Friday, and certain things like sports, they can get into the nitty gritty of that at a later date. But even just the distinction between Gaelic football being allowed to go ahead and rugby not being allowed to go ahead, and that going ahead a few weeks later in phase 5 as opposed to phase 4 is something that's certainly raised eyebrows. Like the idea of reopening pitches and then not allowing small training sessions for a while as well. You'd have similar questions about that too. Like there has to be some sort of hope given when it comes to activity and when it comes to trying to get back to some level of normality. But there are definitely a few things that you look at through the roadmap and you're like, right, I can't actually see this happening because of something else that's written in this document, or I'm not sure why this thing has been put in at this stage rather than at a later stage. And there's just a few little contradictions here and there, isn't there?
Yeah, like I actually don't mind contradictions, and if it's a roadmap, it's not like it's not Google Maps where you've got the specific individual instructions about turn left, walk 50 yards, turn left again. It's like, this is a roadmap and we're going to talk about it as we go along. Like, I get that people want certainty, and uncertainty in this situation is going to lead, and I'm talking generally about the economic recovery of the country, is going to lead to a lot of difficulty for people. Everybody wants to know about when their business is going to be okay again, particularly if you're a pub or a cafe or a restaurant owner, and they're having significant difficulties at the moment. So when it comes to this kind of stuff, like, let's have conversations about it. Nicky Brennan's in one of the papers today, recovered from COVID-19. Obviously, we send her our very best wishes. He's saying that he actually was quite positive about what he saw because he understands that the government are trying their best and they're trying to give people hope. We can't all come out and beat the shit out of them with a big stick and go, there's a hole here and a hole here and a hole here and a hole here and a hole here. This is shambles. Let's not have anything to do with it. And that's a completely fair response from some people. And I understand the impetus behind that response. I just wonder if there's any way that we can actually come to some kind of healing consensus where we go, okay, well, this is going to be impossible. You are going to be able to have small-sided games that are non-contact for training for a number of weeks, and then we'll see what the infection rate is like. And if the infection rate stays really low, then we'll have more information. Bear in mind that every couple of weeks, more information is coming through, more people are getting tested, and the science of the facts that we exist in is being established. So 3 weeks' time, 4 weeks' time, 6 weeks' time, 8 weeks' time, 12 weeks' time, we're going to know far more than we know now. Saying now that, let's stop talking about this because the whole plan isn't finalised, seems to me a bit defeatist and a bit churlish.
Yeah, in fairness, I think certainly the grievances I would have with it are not about the here and the now. It's about, okay, what happens when we get to July 20th? And we're actually in this position where the roadmap has been properly followed. What do we do then? And it's kind of preempting the conversations that might be having at this point rather than criticising the decision to actually publish this right here, right now. Because, as you say, this is an important step. It's almost like a situation of show your work. Like, let us see what the plan is here before actually coming up with the solution. And I think that has to be appreciated. Like, I think there is an undercurrent in all of this now that has changed a little bit over, well, not even in the last couple of weeks. I think to be honest with you, I think it's been something that's been bubbling up since St. Patrick's Day, really, where there is starting to be divisions emerging between the view on the government and the view of the official handling of this crisis. I think prior to that, and with Varadkar's speech on St. Patrick's Day, everything was largely positive, but there's definitely been a lot of division since then. And perhaps with that, you have varying degrees of opinion as well. And there will be a school of thought that says we need to absolutely stay in our houses and stay locked up until a vaccine is found. And then at the very other end of the spectrum, you'll have people who will say we are going to have to step outside our door eventually. No matter what we do, an element of risk will be involved. And part of me is definitely agreeing with that element of things. Like, no matter what happens, the first step will be a risky thing to do, won't it? We won't be 100% safe doing anything when we start to do something. So it's just about controlling that risk, really, and having faith in the people who are making the decisions that they have all the available information that they can possibly get and that they're acting in good faith, which they obviously are.
Yeah, it's about accepting that risk too. At some point, what risk is an acceptable level of risk for for us to continue to have a society? Like, and it's not going to be the same at all. It's going to be very different, and we'll work out what that looks like. But it has to be something, and at some point, we're going to all have to try and get back. And so, having a roadmap where everybody has these conversations, I think you're exactly right. The show your work here is, let's have a conversation about this. What do you think is possible? Who are the brightest minds over there who are thinking about that from your perspective? And let's hear it. Like, so golf are thinking about what they can do, racing are thinking about what they can do, the GAA is thinking about what they can do, as opposed to all these organisations going, well, look, it's not up to us, it's actually up to the government and the various health authorities, and there are many of them, to give us ideas and recommendations. It's like, well, what could we possibly do? What does our sport look like in a world where social distancing exists, in a world where there are no supporters, in a world where there are a ban on gatherings over 250 or over 500? What can we achieve with that level? And that's where our crazy ideas about, like, slam dunk contests or the equivalent in GAA are like, yeah, I would, like, if that's all we have this year, let's have a festival of football which is individual free taking and skills and something. Like, like, that's obviously not where we want to get to. Our ambition is to have 15 on 15, full contact and all the rares and schmozzles that we want that made the games great in the first place. But, like, show your work.
Yeah, and a situation where you are constantly concerned about being shot down or being concerned about the fact, and it is a fact, that sport is not the most important thing right now. That is probably a fairly regressive attitude. Just because finding a vaccine, the load on the health service is clearly the most important thing in the world right now, doesn't mean that sport is totally unimportant, and doesn't mean that governing bodies are wasting their time by considering what you say, various ways of actually having some semblance of activity up and running before the end of the summer or before the end of the year. There will be positive outcomes from that. Getting something up and running, there is a huge value in that. It's not as big as finding a vaccine, but there is still value in it.
15 minutes past 8 here this morning. Sports bulletin for you. Waterford have become the latest League of Ireland club to temporarily lay off players and staff. The players will have to avail of the government's income support of €350 per week. Clubs will hold more talks with the FAI this week over potentially playing matches behind closed doors. The prospect of the German Bundesliga being handed the green light tomorrow to resume football behind closed doors has suffered a couple of setbacks. 10 positive tests for coronavirus emerged from the 1,724 conducted as a hygiene procedure across 36 clubs in the top 2 divisions. Then Hertha Berlin suspended Solomon Kalou from training and matches after he posted an ill-judged video on social media shaking hands and interrupting a medical test, breaching social distancing rules. The former Chelsea player has apologised for his actions. In Spain, La Liga clubs are returning to training this week with a view to completing their season by the end of June. I'm going to speak with Dermot Corrigan in about 20 minutes' time to get to the bottom of how they're going to do that and what their plans are. Meanwhile, the London Times are reporting that some matches may be shown free to air on YouTube if and when the Premier League returns, but it's unlikely any live matches will be carried on terrestrial television. In golf, Rory McIlroy will return to the course on Sunday, the 17th of May, for a socially distant exhibition skins game with Dustin Johnson, Ricky Fowler and Matthew Wolff. The televised event in Florida will adhere to strict guidelines around staying apart and testing, and all proceeds from the event will be donated to medical charities. So the whole world will be watching that one in 12 days' time. In horse racing, racing is free to resume behind closed doors in France next Monday. Horse Racing Ireland are awaiting clarification as to whether Irish fixtures can resume without crowds on the 18th of May, or if the sport will have to wait until the 29th of June. And the NFL have confirmed no American football games in London this year. They're maintaining a schedule of clubs hosting matches at their home stadia in the USA. That's what they're saying for now, and whether an NFL season is possible remains to be seen. But the matches slated for Wembley and Spurs are off. There was some suggestion that perhaps what they might do is move everybody to Orlando and have everybody play each other in some kind of weird Eden Project style existence. And so, you know, the San Francisco 49ers home game against the Seattle Seahawks would actually happen in Orlando, and they'd all stay in a Disney resort, and it's some kind of weird science fiction movie. Was it Running Man? Was that they were all running for their lives in that one. Right, here's what's coming up on the show this morning. We've got the sports pages, European football with Dermot Corrigan. Off the couch today is Oliver Dingley, and then off the bull is our look at the Michael Jordan documentary, which a load of you have been enjoying. Right, time for us to get to the sports pages.
OTB AM.
So on offtheball.com, Hertha Berlin suspends Solomon Kalou for ill-judged coronavirus video. I should tell you as well about Off the Brawl. Andy Lee has been talking about Tyson Fury, and this is all available for you on the website as well, about Tyson Fury beating both Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua, but he said it's unlikely that those fights will go ahead with no crowds. And then no NFL games in London in 2020. Obviously, that is the situation there. Rory McIlroy will be back in the course, as we've just told you too. So that's offtheball.com for you this morning.
The Irish Examiner this morning leads with that story that you mentioned, Ger, about Nicky Brennan revealing his COVID-19 ordeal. I'm a lot better now, he says, but I went through a very rough period, and I'm very grateful and thankful that he came through it on the day. David Goff, meanwhile, says I wouldn't ref under current plan, which is a new angle on the situation regarding a potential return to play, saying he wouldn't, in the current state of play, referee a competitive game of football. Course of action, how Denmark could provide template for Irish golf's return, and hurling's smart ball could detect illegal hand passes. So this is the GAA's new digital slitter on what that could bring to the game.
The Irish Independent this morning, top medic, no difference in risk between club and county. This is an interesting story. So Jim O'Donovan, the former Limerick footballer who acts as the GPA's medical advisor, as well as being a member of the GAA's medical and scientific committee. Really impressive character, Jim O'Donovan. And he's saying he doesn't really think he doesn't understand any distinction being made between club and county. This is a direct quote. Now, there may be a difference in spectatorship, but not for the players as long as social distancing is in place. He stated, adding that the weekend views of Dr. Cillian de Gascon, a member of the NPHE, the National Public Health Emergency Team, would carry a lot of weight in the world of Irish sport because he is the sports physician at the Irish Institute of Sport. He said that he didn't think it would be feasible or ethical to test inter-county players on such a regular basis that would allow them to play out a championship as long as the virus is prevalent. The amount for one team, you're looking at 5,000 tests just to get everyone through. And there's also the false negatives that they're trying to work the testing out at this stage. We're months away from being conclusive about testing. For this year, it wouldn't be a consideration. So that whole notion of inter-county players being tested. And this got floated, a kite got flown, and then there was a backlash about it a couple of weeks back. And then there's the ethical question, you're taking tests away from the general population as well. So that seems unlikely there. And World Rugby restart plan could hit IRFU coffers bad. That is the whole playing games behind closed doors until a vaccine is in place. The Irish Union lost between 3.5 and 4 million from the postponement of the Six Nations match against Italy alone, and they missed out on prize money and TV revenue when the away trip to France fell victim to the crisis as well. The summer tour hasn't been called off, but will be in the coming days, according to Roy O'Connor here. And obviously due to host South Africa, Australia and Japan in the November series. So all those ideas about maybe a second Six Nations later on in the year behind closed doors is about the best they could hope for at this stage, it looks like.
Absolutely. Back page of the London Times this morning is YouTube may show Premier League games, which you've already mentioned as well. All 92 of the remaining games looking to be broadcast on some form of television or some form of platform, I should say. And it may not just be you're behind a paywall situation, so YouTube could be involved in that. You've got a photograph of Jadon Sancho there as well, back at training. Plan to ease players' fears, writes Matt Lawton, on the coronavirus, and bowlers could use wax on ball. So cricket's world governing body to discuss the use of external substances to shine the ball after an Australian company said that they were developing a wax that could replace saliva.
Yeah, no spits on the ball, just wax.
Yeah. Just on that picture of Jadon Sancho, I wonder if we're going to, as players come back into focus again, are we going to see anybody who's ridiculously out of shape or people who've really enjoyed lockdown?
I hope so. I mean, that would be great.
It would be great.
Yeah.
Like
the rest of us.
Exactly. The COVID ton hopefully has been something that even professional athletes have indulged in.
The Irish Times this morning, the Jerry Thornley piece there is quality of that seminal Leinster-Munster semi-final still a cause for wonder. He's got a great stat in this piece. So he's obviously talking about the time that our boys beat your boys on. I know as a rugby man, this is the thing that galls you even more than the fact that Tyrone are the team of the noughties, but it's the time that Leinster handed out one hell of a beating to Munster in the 2009 Heineken Cup semi-final. And where's the stat gone? 9 of Ireland's 10 most capped players of all time were in the starting lineups. That's insane, isn't it?
It is remarkable, but you've also got to remember that that's 14 years after the dawn of professionalism. Six Nations had only started 9 years beforehand. That era is always going to be the one that has the most caps.
Well, no, it's not. The one that comes after it, they're going to get more caps.
They will, but
they
right
haven't.
Now,
that's the thing, they haven't. Here we are, 11 years on, and that has yet to, they've all got to be replaced.
But there's a huge swathe of those players who were playing that day in 09 that went on to continue to play for another 5-6 years. O'Driscoll and O'Gara were still around for a while. I need to just get the...
I'll give you the list. Brian O'Driscoll, Ronan O'Gara, Paul O'Connell, John Hayes, Peter Stringer, Cian Healy, Jamie Heaslip, Rob Kearney and Donnacha O'Callaghan.
Yeah, a lot of them went on for a few years after. It's obviously a sensational stat.
Do you think we're going to have 9 out of the top 10 ever again playing in a match? I don't think we will.
No, but that's because the
I understand they go on to win caps after that. I understand that. I get the point you're making here. That cow is far away. I understand. Do you think there will ever be faraway cows again? Oh, that's the question I'm asking.
No, because there will be more cows further away and other cows closer.
Exactly.
And some miniature cows as well.
Right.
Some that are actually small.
I don't think we're ever going to... Nivea le hay down a reach.
What a game is what you're trying to say, and well done to everybody involved at Leinster for achieving that and for finally getting their house in order to actually beat Munster in a game of note in 2009.
Look at you, look at that bitter dig at the end there. 31 Irish internationals featured in the game. 13 have played for or would go on to play for the Lions. That's not bad as well.
Yeah, that's your stat. That's your. This is a game full of greatness statistic, I think. I'll move on to the mirror if you're done with that.
No, I'm not. Sexton, okay. Dempsey, Toner, and Sean O'Brien were on the bench that day. That's pretty impressive.
So Sean O'Brien makes the bench. Doesn't make Neil Tracy's bench in the all-time professional 15. Well, I suppose his argument would be that he couldn't even make the starting team in that 09 game. That would be Neil Tracy's argument if he was
Rocky
on air
Elson, who was man of the match in every game he played down that stretch, and one of the greatest displays of sport seen essentially since Michael Jordan in their first year that they won. That's the level that Rocky Elson was operating at for that 8 to 12 week period. And he couldn't get in ahead of him. Yeah, sure, because he was only a kid. And they also have got a feature on Bloodgate, by the way, which is worth digging out too. You just forget about how cheatingist those Harlequins were that nearly robbed us of that game. Imagine if the Quins had managed to somehow cheat their way through that. Anyway, that's worth digging out. If you want to feel some righteous anger about something as opposed to something somebody has said on Twitter about a picture of some kids having some fun at the weekend, then dig out the Irish Times this afternoon and you can go for that instead.
Unless, of course, you're not a Leinster rugby fan, in which case it's I'm not sure what you might actually find some hilarity.
Sorry, you think that as a sports fan, you think it's acceptable for Harlequins to introduce a blood capsule, spit the blood capsule out, have it look exactly like a schlock horror film from the 1970s, one of the worst blaxploitation flicks, wouldn't have done this crap, and then bully some poor doctor into slitting his bottom lip, which cost her massive professional difficulties. Okay, Owen, I'm on your side. Yeah, I see what you're doing.
That was is there going to be a sort of
no, too late. You can't take away out of this now.
Quiz-esque drama series released by ITV on Bloodgate? If they manage to do major fraud, they should be able to do Bloodgate. I think
I would watch that.
I'll move on to the Mirror. And it's a picture of Daniel Farke there. Any death is one too many. Norwich boss is saying, I want chance to work a little miracle with rock bottom side and try to stay up, but not at the risk of a life. Ravel Morrison, meanwhile, says, if only I could live my life over again. The football rebel reveals how he stupidly wasted his career. Flying solo retirement is closing in on former AFL star Cullum. And then you've also got pictures of German footballers getting tested for COVID-19.
Back page of the Mail. This morning is Rory returns. McIlroy is back as golf restarts later on this month. And so that's Rory McIlroy and Dustin Johnson, who's going to play for charity in Florida on May the 17th. And hopefully they don't do the whole bro handshake either. Premier League eye Wembley in Project Restart. So Project Restart, they like to give their owl military things names in England, and that always works out really well for them anyway. Project Restart is the clammy name they've come up with for this one, and they're talking about using Wembley as one of the venues that would be suitable because I don't know, they thought they weren't going to be able to use it, but now the police and the government have decided that they think they should use it. It's going to be a suitably biosecure venue.
Do you think that, they're calling this Project Restart and kind of militarizing everything, they're just going to rename the 5 stadiums to Gold, Juno, Omaha, and whatever the other 2 were, and actually completely ramp this up as the most extraordinary project since World War II?
What was Gold, Juno, Omaha? What was that?
The D-Day beaches.
Okay. I haven't seen Dunkirk. Is that where you're getting this info from?
No, it's from the actual little nook and crannies that exist in my brain.
All right, well done.
That is the most patronising thing ever, and...
Oh, how is it patronising? I'm like, that's a nice little bit of information that you nearly knew well.
Well done. Thank you for coming up with this piece of information. It's okay. I will come up with further information.
Yes, I think that's exactly what they're going to do. And they'll rebrand them, and then they'll sell sponsorship of them to various people who can inspire us with their supporting of the heroic frontline footballers who are making money for everybody.
The back page of the Irish Daily Star this morning is David Goff and his comments as well. It's not worth the risk, he says. Top GAA refs return worries. Gordon Elliott says people face ruin. So he's talking about the urgency about getting racing back underway. And Daniel Fark there as well. His restart worries. And one positive test would be too many, one death would be too many, he says, when it comes to the Premier League's restart.
Yeah, so the Irish Sun, back page of the Irish Sun is Stream Team agreement for free Prem matches online. Telly Giants deal to screen all 92 matches. That's BT Sport, Sky, Amazon and YouTube, all providing people with the opportunity to stay at home. And I used to be right. 4 letters all started out for Troy Deeney in that piece that he's done. Elliot called to arms, saying that racing needs to get back sooner rather than later. And then the last one is Covidiot is Caluless. Callus? Is that what they're trying to say? German football was in uproar.
Clueless.
Oh, Clueless. With Solomon Kalou last night after the former Chelsea star was suspended by Hertha Berlin for breaking coronavirus rules. I didn't realise that Solomon Kalou was still playing. Like, I would have said his heyday was in the noughties. Am I completely wrong in my decades with this?
Turn of no, he played in the 2012 Champions League final for Chelsea. So turn of the decade, yeah. Like it's certainly something that raised my eyebrows as well. That definitely that he existed at Hertha Berlin at the moment, but also that he's playing at such a high level still.
He's only 34.
Yeah, he was
Chelsea 06 to 2012. So yeah, I mean,
that was his last game. So was it the Champions League final?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a Hertha Berlin legend. Has been there since 2014.
Right, Jesus. So 4 more years, gets a testimonial. Who knows what happens?
What a great city to spend a decade in. As like a rich young footballer.
Not bad. Well, as an athlete, it perhaps isn't the best place to spend. It would be a great place to retire to as a rich young ex-footballer.
The other thing, I hate the downfall pastiches at this stage. I've seen 6 million of them. They're all rubbish. I didn't watch the one that's going around at the moment. The first couple of times it got sent into my WhatsApp group, and then I was like, why are people still sending this? How does this have any life? And then I watched it, and it turned out it was absolutely amazing. Have you seen it?
Which one is this? No, you haven't seen a downfall meme in about 10 years.
Well, exactly. And if somebody put one into one of your WhatsApp groups now, would you actually watch it?
Not a chance.
No, not a chance. But then the weight of the deluge with which it came through yesterday, I was like, I better watch this. And I was snorting so loud in the back garden yesterday evening just after dinner that my kids huddled around me to try and see what it was, and eventually kind of were seeing it. I was like, look, it's for grown-ups only. And my eldest was like, oh, there must be the F word in it. At which point my youngest started yelling the word fuck in the back garden to the point where like society had broken down. But it turns out the downfall meme, there was a few references. There's an old pint on the front of it. It's about people missing the pub, essentially.
Right. That's I must check that. And, like when you said that there was such a deluge with the meme being sent into your WhatsApp group, what does that mean?
Several different people sent it.
Oh, okay.
Who all commented about how good it was. I'm like, really? It can't be good. It's a downfall meme. How good can it be?
Well, I for one welcome the return of the downfall memes.
Do you know what? Do you know what? It was like a comfortable, warm, old pair of slippers that you go into, your expectations are low, and then you're like, these are brilliant. This is exactly what I wanted.
We're getting nostalgic for memes at this point. That is where society is at.
Well, I think that's...
Meme nostalgia.
Yeah, look...
we're in the future.
Any port in a storm.
Oh, like, we're at this port and this storm is certainly existing in a place in a year that I never thought we'd all reach. But anyway, back page of The Guardian is Sir Steve Redgrave. My daughter's on the NHS frontline. As a parent, you worry. No fans until vaccine found. Six Nations and Lions could be forced behind closed doors. And EFL and Top Flight at odds over parachute payment. And then David Heitner inside How Will Football Change? From Grassroots to the Premier League, a new series on the game after COVID-19.
So the Telegraph, which I'll just dig out for you here, is at the back of their business section this morning. And crowds barred until vaccine is found is the headline. That's the same piece, obviously, about rugby. Lengthy absence would plunge sport into crisis. Face masks, gloves and no contact for training return. Rugby union facing a devastating financial blow. Players could be pressured into refusing terms of Project Restart. This is football. Agents of Premier League players expect some clubs to launch campaigns to discourage them from returning under the terms of Project Restart. So this is slightly Machiavellian, where the clubs are getting the players to say no. The bottom six are opposed to using neutral venues for the remaining games, and there are fears they will apply pressure on squads to refuse to play. The Brighton CEO has gone on the record to say it would damage the integrity of the competition. I mean, I don't know how. I actually got to get those games played or just face automatic relegation. Plans to scrap relegation to be opposed by Sky and BT, obviously. So there's a lot to get through there, and essentially that's what we're talking about now. With do you want to do the Irish news before we get to Dermot Corrigan?
Yeah, just lastly, McLinden says Division 1 drive will pave the way for Armagh. So it's Brian McLinden who's saying the championship joy can follow on heels of promotion, and racing in France poised to resume on May the 11th. It hasn't been up and running since St. Patrick's Day.
Okay, I'm delighted to say Dermot Corrigan is with us this morning as well. Dermot, good morning to you. How are you doing?
Hey, Ger, how's it going?
Yeah, good. Before we get into the La Liga situation, how is life in Spain? It seems like there's been some minor reduction in the quarantine that you guys have been sitting through.
Yeah, over the last week or so, the government have relaxed a little bit the restrictions. It's still quite restrictive, but we're allowed out for a walk. It was 7 weeks where we weren't really supposed to leave the house except to go to the shop. So we're inside just to the little bit of garden we have was as far as we were going with the kids. Whereas now you're able to bring them for a walk. Went out for a run for the first time in 7 weeks at the weekend as well. So bit by bit, there's a feeling of things opening up. Obviously, it depends on how things go, and there's still most of the shops are closed. Most people are working from home, the people who can. But there's a feeling maybe that heading out of the restrictions, and hopefully that things are heading in the right direction. And
is that contingent on the figures continuing to come down? And what has the trend in the figures been like over the last couple of days?
Yeah, for sure. The figures are like, it's weird to be talking about things in a positive way when they're still, it's still quite high. But the figures were up at like 1,000 people a day were dying, which was awful. They've come down to like 200, something around that. They pop up and down, but they're heading in the right direction, which is allowing the hospitals seem to be able to handle what they need to at the moment. Because there were, like in Madrid here, they opened up a field hospital in a big conference centre. What was turned over into a makeshift hospital. A big ice rink was turned into a morgue for a while. There was those type of things which were pretty spectacularly concerning and awful, really. Whereas they have been closed now, so the hospital system seems to be able to handle what it needs to at the moment, which is allowing for the little bits of opening up to happen.
While all that was happening, the conversation around football was happening as well, and it's obviously a very difficult conversation for anybody to have, but the importance of football as an economic driver in Spain kept being spoken about. So it was like a significant number of jobs, a significant amount of money that will help to restart the economy from a television perspective, from a revenue perspective, even from the gambling companies. They were like, look, this is all very difficult for us to talk about, but we kind of need to get this back up and running. So was the political pressure coming from was the pressure coming from the political side as opposed to football, or did football find that they had common ground with the politicians in trying to get the game back as soon as possible?
Yeah, more of the second one, I'd say. Like La Liga president Javier Tebas is a very smart guy, and he was out in front of it, really, that as soon as everything shut down, he was talking about how important football was, how much it's like 1.3% of the entire GDP of the country, according to La Liga anyway, is generated by football. There's thousands and thousands of jobs. I don't have the figure here. And he was quickly saying that we're going to have to bring it back. If we can't play these 11 games that are left, it's going to be huge, that clubs are going to go out of business, that it's just unsustainable to have it. We saw at Barcelona there was a bit of a row between the players and the board over how they were going to impose wage cuts, and the players ended up kind of taking over that as well, which was huge news here. It was like headline news. So football was front and centre in how maybe society was dealing with coronavirus, or the impact that it was having on different parts And the Spanish sports minister, because football in Spain, the different authorities are always at war between, especially the Federation and La Liga. That came out that one would have one plan, another would have another plan. They'd be criticising each other in the headlines. The sports minister kind of knocked them together and got them to come up with a protocol they've talked about to be able to bring football back. And she was quite open about saying that it would be a good thing to get football back, even if it is just on the TVs, that people can, she said, sit around the TV and watch it. It'll bring people together, be something to talk about. And it will be a sign that at least if we have games to watch on the TV and to talk about in the media and everything, that will be a sign that we're on the path back to normality. The health guys weren't quite as keen on that. There was a little bit of strife between the health minister and the sports minister, or behind the scenes anyway. But they've been able to work out a plan which sees players in for testing today, and they're hoping to roll out a phased return that will get games back by the middle of June.
Can we just tease out what that difficulty from the health perspective was? Because that's the thing really that everybody's concerned about, that there's going to be a second wave, and that getting people back to work early is going to bring a second wave, and that's going to be catastrophic for the health system and for the economy into the future, because that's at that point there's no kind of like, oh, it'll be grand, we know what we're doing. It's like you get one shot at this. So what were the concerns? Did any of that leak out into public about what the health minister was specifically concerned about?
The biggest problem was more around the availability of tests, because there's a lot of people in Spain who would like to get tested, especially people working in supermarkets or in the health system, or people who are whose jobs are more important than footballers, I guess. Whereas La Liga were able to source tests through a German company, I think it was, but in a private way, so they were going to set it up themselves, and that just didn't look so good when the health system was struggling to get enough testing and to get enough of the equipment that they needed. That's not such a big deal at the moment, is my understanding, because the situation is more under control, which means that the health system have withdrawn the concerns that they had, or have taken the block off it. And football was even mentioned in the briefings of the health. I'm not sure he's the health minister, but the guy from the government who gives the health briefings every day was asked about football and said that it would be possible that they'd found a way to allow the test to go ahead, and for the players to be able to get it, even though there's still people who maybe in more important jobs who would like to get tested.
Right. So even on the pitch, the health professionals in Spain are fairly confident that things will be safe, actually proceeding with the games and actually having a full game of 22 players on the pitch will actually be okay and won't pose any extra risk to players or any unnecessary risk to players.
Nobody's gone quite that far to say it. Okay. Everybody's been quite. There's a lot of talk about phased rollouts and phase 1 and phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and there's a big document produced by La Liga in association with the health authorities, but it seems to be La Liga who maybe wrote most of the document and then got it signed off on by the health authorities, and that means that, like, when the players go back, they're being tested in their cars this week, so they roll up to the training ground and get tested through the car window, and then they go home, and then within 48 hours or so they should have the results of that, allowing them to restart training either maybe on Friday or early next week, where they just go in and go for a run around the training ground on their own. They don't come into contact with anybody, and then bit by bit it's built up into small groups working together, always on the hope kind of that everything continues to go in the same direction, and that there's less, I don't know, it's kind of facetious to say, but maybe less coronavirus around, so there's less chance of people being infected or picking it up on the way to the shops or whatever, and then bringing it into the training centre. But it's all it's impossible to say at the moment. It's all based on kind of a positive scenario or best case scenarios. They're starting to go back in the hope that they'll be able to do it, rather than saying that in 6 weeks' time it'll be fine and we're sure that you'll be able to run around and challenge for headers and all that a football game involves. That it's all hopeful rather than anybody making any promises about what might happen.
It's interesting that La Liga have put together this document and got the government and the health professionals to sign off on it, rather than taking instruction and making their plan as a result of what the government may give them. Isn't it that's fairly proactive from everybody involved in the Liga?
Yeah, for sure. And La Liga president Javier Tebas a divisive figure. Maybe in some ways he's a guy who's often in the headlines, who talks a lot, who's very forceful in his opinions about what's good for Spanish football, and he's a guy who can get things done. You know, he's brought in a lot of changes in Spanish football. He's professionalised it a lot, and he's not afraid of a challenge. Really, he's taken this on, taken a real leadership kind of role in this. Not everybody is super happy with that, and there's been some blowback from different people. But even from talking around to clubs and to people close to the players, everybody seems to be happy to allow La Liga to take a leading role on it, and for them to be the ones who put in place the plan, and then other people will go along with that. The health system, I think, I don't know. I haven't been in that much contact with the health system, so I'd be kind of assuming what they're doing. But they're so busy that they're not going to be putting in a special plan for football at the minute. But when their people had a look at the plan, they agreed for it to go forward in the initial stage, at least.
How did the players feel about this, Dermot?
Yeah, it's changed a lot because, you know, football was badly hit at the start. Remember the Valencia game that they played against Atalanta in Milan, which, you know, people talked about as a biological bomb, or there was a lot of it had a bad effect. And then the Atletico Madrid game in Anfield, that people worried that a lot of people got infected at that as well. And Valencia had some players, like 35% of Valencia's first team players and staff tested positive for it. So there were a lot of people saying, you know, footballers can't be the guinea pigs for this, or footballers are, you know, we all have families too. We have, you know, maybe older relatives or family members who are in high risk situations, who have illnesses. So they were very against it at the start. It didn't look like it was going to be possible at all. But bit by bit, as the weeks have gone past, and especially as over the last week, as things have started to open up here, the people I've been talking to anyway, close to the players, have said that the players, they realise that they have to get back to work, that their livelihoods depend on it, that they can't just say, that's it, we're not going to play, that's not a realistic option for them, really. There have been a couple of people, Rafinha at Celta Vigo, used to play for Barcelona, says he won't play until there's a vaccine found for it, and a couple of other players as well. But generally, the players aren't going out and doing too many interviews about it. They don't want to be seen to be disrespecting anybody, or to be making too many steps in public, but in private they kind of accept that, well, it's our job and we're going to have to go back to it, always with the understanding that all the tests are done and that everything is done as much as possible. They realise that there's some risk involved in everything, and people are taking risks, whether they're working in the supermarket or delivery guys or bus drivers or whoever, and that they're going to have to do it too.
When do you actually think there would be, under this plan, what's the likelihood of there being a game? At what date?
Well, the hope is for the 11th of June has been talked about as a time where there might be a game, but it's very difficult to anybody who tells you for sure that that's going to happen, you know, doesn't really know, because it all depends on what happens. But that's what they're working towards at the moment. And if the figures or the numbers continue to fall, and if the situation appears to be under control, you know, there's talk of bars and restaurants opening up quite soon here. Shops are bit by bit, hairdressers are open here this week. So if things continue to go like that, and we're heading back towards some kind of, you know, the new normal, as people are kind of saying about it a little bit, then it seems possible that there might be games within the month of June. Which would be an incredible turnaround from where we were 3-4 weeks ago. Yeah, it's going to be weird. Like I spoke to, just for one of the piece I did for The Athletic, I spoke to a guy from a fans group, and they're against it. Like the idea of playing the games behind closed doors, he talked about it as like a reality TV show more than a football league. It's just going to be different. Like even to imagine, you know, how the players, what motivation they're going to have, what happens when maybe some of their squad members can't play because they're in quarantine and they have to play itself. It's going to be really unique kind of situation if it does happen to roll out. It's going to be fascinating to see. Everything is kind of weird at the moment to be talking about it like this, but the hope on the behalf of La Liga and on behalf of the clubs and of a lot of the players is that they're willing to get involved in the process and to push it forward and to move in that direction and to try and play the games. Last question: do you think Spain then will become a template for other countries around Europe that like it seems like there's a bit of a race on at the moment between the Premier League, La Liga, and even the Bundesliga to get football back as soon as they possibly can? I
I guess those football authorities and those health authorities are looking at what everybody else is doing to try and see what the best practice is or what mistakes are being made?
Yeah, for sure. Like you saw at Crystal Palace, chairman, I think, is it Steve Parish? He was talking about how football needs to come back as well in England, and using La Liga and using Javier Tebas as an example of people who were working towards it and something that they would like to follow. Yeah, like we've been watching very closely what's going on in Germany here, who are a little bit ahead with the tests, and we saw Kalou yesterday maybe making a little bit unfortunate video, and that could have a setback. And everybody is watching everybody else, but there's a feeling, I guess, in Spain and I guess in England, in lots of leagues as well, that football can't. If the games aren't played, the football is going to be very difficult to survive. It's going to, have huge consequences. Clubs are going to go bankrupt. Players' contracts are going to just have to be terminated, and they don't want that to happen at all. So they're trying to find a way to avoid that. And if it does work in Spain, then I guess other people will try to follow that example.
All right, good stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this morning, and stay well. Thanks a million.
Yeah, you guys too. Nice to talk to you.
Right, that's the scenario in Spanish football. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number. That was Dermot Corrigan talking to us about how European football can return. Today's Off the Couch workout with Olympian Oliver Dingley goes live on the Off the Ball channels at 1 o'clock. It's brought to you in association with Joint Ace. Joint Ace is packed with trace minerals, vitamins and nutrients to support a fit and healthy lifestyle at any age. Check out jointace.com for more. We're going to chat with Ollie next. But first, Shane Keegan and Colin Keys joined Joe on the Sunday paper review. Here they are on the prospect of sport returning.
When it comes to the return of sport, there is the well-being argument as far as I can see, talking broadly, but there's the well-being argument and then there's the financial argument. So let's park finances for a second when it comes to GAA, and that's not really what Colin's talking about at all. So if we tease out the well-being argument, why do we need games? Why can't we all go training and players can wash their hands, kick footballs to each other, work on their touch, work on their fitness, and do it all in a very safe way? Why do we need competition? Why is that so urgent for our well-being? Because if you train and train well, you still get, I would say, 95% of the benefits. You get interaction with other people and your friends. It's good for your head, physical exercise, sense of improving as a team, whatever you want. It ticks all the boxes. So why do I need to mark you at close encounters for 70 minutes and us be rubbing against each other for 70 minutes?
Because players need something to aim for, Joe. And as much and all as they might enjoy the camaraderie of being within a group and being within a team, at the end of the day, you've got a goal and everything is aimed towards that goal. I mean, when you get up in the morning, your day has a purpose, knowing that you're going to training session that evening. Those training sessions have a purpose because you're working towards a game that's coming up shortly. Those games have a purpose because you're working towards trying to win a championship. If there's no championship, all of that trickles back and you wonder why you're getting up in the morning.
Yeah, I don't buy that, actually. I must say, I don't buy that. I mean, lads train in November for championships that start in summertime. Your goal can be to get to X on the fitness test. Your goal can be to improve your touch. Your goal can be any number of things. Now, I'm talking here in the context of the risk, Shane. Like, for me, that's not a good enough reason to risk people's health.
And that's me trying to give you the argument as to, I suppose, why it's needed. Is that outweighed against the negatives? It's not. Like, I want sport as much as Colin wants, believe
Sure.
me, arguably more, but it isn't going to happen, and it can't happen.
Yeah, so that's the conversation yesterday from the paper review, where they were talking about the return to play and the opposite, or the difference between competition and the urge to compete and the urge to stay fit. 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number here if you want to get in touch with us this morning. Now, today's Off the Couch workout goes live on the Off the Ball channels at 1 o'clock. It's brought to you in association with Joint Ace. Joint Ace is packed with trace minerals, vitamins and nutrients to support a fit and healthy lifestyle at any age. Check out jointace.com for more. Oliver Dingley is with us to talk to us about what he's going to do for us today. Oliver, how are you getting on?
Hey, good morning. How's it going? I'm grand, thank you.
The last time you were in here was one of the last days before we were all told to work from home, and the four of us sat here along this tiny little studio, and in retrospect we're looking back at the photographs sometimes going, we were all very close to each other, really, weren't we?
Very, very true. It's kind of been fairly surreal how everything's changed so fast as well, especially in the sporting world. But it's something that I'd say that I think we all expected at the time.
100%, and we seem to have got used to it, I think. Now, how well we're doing as a country is up for debate. How are you actually maintaining some level of elite fitness when, I don't know if you've access to all the training facilities that you would have had before lockdown?
So for me, I actually found it quite hard to get going in the first place. Kind of getting myself out of bed kind of before lunchtime, trying to have breakfast when I should be having lunch. And so I've actually found it quite hard. But getting back on the wagon and doing a bit of exercise has actually really, really helped me. And kind of trying to be keeping a nice balance, kind of trying to cover everything. I've been lucky enough to get a bit of equipment from the Institute of Sport, so I'm able to carry on some of my diving practices, just everything that's outside of a pool. I'm kind of getting withdrawal symptoms now from the water, which is it felt like a fairly long time since I last managed to dip my toes in the water and do a dive into the pool.
When you were here, we were talking about when the Olympics were eventually going to be postponed and the likelihood that it was going to happen. When it did happen, what was that experience actually like? Was there a period of mourning for this year and for what you've lost, or were you actually like, right, great, I'm delighted that kind of plaster has been ripped off?
I think relief, actually, a bit of clarity was really, really helpful. And because I was actually going for my qualifying event, I think maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks afterwards. So to know that the hardest thing actually was kind of going from full blast to kind of relatively doing absolutely nothing. And that was a bit of a shock to the system. But I've just really been keeping myself busy, and I think that's helped. And it's helped me kind of reset, revalue my goals, and it's given me a whole year to actually get better as well.
So you're not thinking of this as like, oh, it's a sign I'm going to retire or any of that kind of stuff? You're like full bore for next year?
Oh, yeah. No plans of retiring yet. I'm all guns blazing.
And one of the things that you're doing to keep your mind active is a video for us for Off the Couch. So today, I think we're looking at the glutes. Got to say, I didn't know that much about activating glutes before this whole lockdown. This is definitely a new thing in terms of my life, but it turns out squats and activating your glutes are quite important if you want to do any kind of activity.
It sure is, and especially at a time where we all just sat down for most of the time. It's actually quite good to start activating those muscles. And believe you me, I've been sat down a fair amount of time. So it's nice to get up, get going. But the glutes is the one area where you feel a good bit of burn as well. I think when people go to the gym, that they tend to focus on the abs, the arms, and the glutes generally get missed. They're good for posture, they're good for athletic performance, and they're good for explosiveness as well. So if you do any sport, the glutes are really essential.
How are your glutes, Owen?
Sensational. Thanks. If you want any advice on how to activate that glute, then you know where to find me.
For those of us who didn't really know that much about it's your ass. That's what we're talking about here, really.
Essentially, yeah.
And why is it so important, Ollie?
Like I said earlier, it's great for posture. It's good for explosiveness, and really just it's good stability for your whole body in general. Having good glutes helps your hamstrings, helps your knees. So if you do a bit of running, having good glutes will actually really help your knees kind of recovery. So really, they're actually quite beneficial, and they're a good foundation.
Obviously, hugely important in your sport, I suspect.
Oh yes, you've got to really ping out of that diving board. So it's kind of we have to jump as high as we can. So the glutes are kind of a daily focus where we just work on them. They really just help us make us explosive, and we really have to try and push some good heights because the way diving's going at the moment, kind of the boundaries are being pushed. So you've got to be on top of the game as well to be able to jump really high to really just throw and hold on for your life for those extra somersaults.
So I stupidly would have assumed that a lot of your spring kind of comes from your knees, but where does your spring come from when you're diving?
Really, it's actually all over, even in the arms, because the way we do an arm swing to propel ourselves, you're literally using the whole body, and you're basically doing it off this thin plank of metal, which really can be quite intimidating. But, I mean, it's the way you use it, your rhythm out of a board. You've got to have really good board timing to start with, and then really that strength takes over. And anything from flexibility helps. So it's really those just fine margins of just being able to get out of a diving board, getting high out of a diving board, and the glutes are really essential there.
Where do you feel most stress? Like, is it your ankles? Is it your knees? Is it your hips? Where, as a diver, when after a dive, are you, oh, my ankle's sore? Like, what is the soreness? Where does it come from, and what bits are you?
The stress really all depends on how your takeoff is, where you land on the end of the diving board. Sometimes it's quite mental because you think, oh God, I've got to really hold on here for my life. Other times, I do the springboard event, so the knees tend to get a bit of a hit because you really have to time the board, which really just takes years. And I've been diving for 20 years now, and I have many days where they just don't go. It doesn't happen, and you really feel it kind of ricochet through the body as you hit that diving board. Now I do a springboard event, which is relatively speaking, quite soft when you hit the water, whereas the 10 meter you're traveling at 50 kilometers an hour when you hit the water. So the impact is totally different, but you can feel it either way.
Yeah, I can see how your head might hurt if you don't land in the right spot.
Oh yes, yeah. Concussion is one of my biggest fears.
Okay, I didn't actually think of that at all. So it is legitimately a proper fear, yeah?
Oh, definitely. I've had some takeoffs where I take off where I just know I shouldn't have, but I'm in that frame of mind where I go for it anyway. And also in competition, you've really got to go for any takeoff you get. So sometimes you run out of space pretty fast. And I've had my fair share of whacks on the water, especially on the forehead, the top of it. Going right across the top of the head is always a painful one, but I'm not really selling diving very well here. Really, it is a good, fun sport, I promise you. I think you've experienced it before as well.
We've seen people do it. I can't wait to get back out there and do all those things again. That you're like, oh, I should have done this a little bit more. Certainly, that is on our list of stuff. And in terms of keeping your mental side strong and your focus on all this stuff, have you had any lessons along the way that you think the rest of us mere mortals should be paying attention to? How have you done it?
Well, really, I always try and take it one day at a time. I always find in a sport like diving where every kind of small detail helps. If you make one mistake, then that's the competition gone. So I always try and take it one dive at a time. And I guess from a sporting perspective, for anyone out there who is worried about this time, everyone's in the same boat. A psychologist once told me that everyone's dealt a pack of cards. Some of those cards are the same cards. Some of you have your own different cards. You might be carrying an injury, but it's how you use those cards and adapt to the situation. And I think this is a period where everyone is really just adapting. And it's a time where we can all reflect as well on how we can also make ourselves better, because in the grand scale of things, sport pales into insignificance compared to what some people are going through at the moment. And but this really is a period where you can better yourself and just use those cards to your advantage.
When you say you've been, or it is possible for people to use this time to get better, what areas have you improved on over the last couple of weeks?
Really, actually try to do my own mental health, because I do sometimes find it that I get into a frame of mind where I find it just hard to get going. And I think a lot of people can relate with that, especially the way the days are going, the long days. Everything's felt like it's just one long day at the moment, and I'm just taking naps in the evening. And then it's the next day it is going again. I haven't really been out too much, so it's nice recently to get going, doing a bit more exercise. College is certainly keeping me busy. I have my podcast as well. So there's lots of different things there I'm trying to keep focused on. And also try and keep that balance between not thinking too much about sport, other areas where I can I'm a terrible cook, so I'm trying to actually get a bit better at cooking. So far isn't working, but I'm still trying to persist. But there's little things where I can just try and really create a good balance and just keep on top of making a schedule each day.
Do you have a trigger or something that you can turn to when you're having a tough day? Like I'm sure it's something that you've been learning because you've always had the pool to go to, or you've had the diving board to go to over recent years. Have you picked up anything where when you realise you're in a mind space that isn't the best, that you can do or you can think about, and that will immediately have a positive impact on you?
I think it's all about just being kind to yourself, not being too harsh on yourself. Because, in a sport like diving where you're looking for perfection, I find it especially going into, say, my college work, but I'm always kind of working myself too hard, trying to look for that extra bit where it isn't going to happen sometimes. So you've got to really just be kind to yourself and just reset and use that motivation for the next day to get going.
In terms of what the plans are for next year, have provisional dates been put in for qualifying for the Olympics and all that kind of stuff? Do you at least have targets to aim for?
No qualifying yet, but we do know when the World Championships are, which are also in Japan, which I think they're in May time. It was actually announced this week. And so they might double that up as a qualifying event. So usually in diving, you have the World Cup, which is in the Olympic venue, and it's generally a few months before the Olympics. And every single diver goes around the world. There's about 70 of the best divers around the world, and only 18 get guaranteed a spot at the Olympics. So it's really, really cutthroat. So I reckon they'll probably double up on the World Championships and maybe get rid of a World Cup. I would assume anyway, and that will be my route to qualifying for the Olympics.
And is that a good thing in some ways, in that like you do actually know that more than likely is going to be the case next year, and you know, whenever you need to do your downtime, your periodization, you can at least begin to plan for that?
I think so. It's always key to get clarity as early on as possible. The other good thing is kind of it gives me structure now as well, where I can then build up. I can plan a month at a time, days at a time. Kind of start to build a sequence where I can really start to focus on certain things, get my body back into shape, get those glutes firing again, and everywhere else in the body as well, and mentally as well. It's a real big help.
Well, listen, great stuff, Ollie. Glad to see you keeping so well, and I think everybody out there is going to activate the hell out of their glutes today when this goes live at 1 o'clock.
Well, good luck. You're going to feel it, but good luck.
Thanks a million. That's Olympic diver Oliver Dingley, who is, of course, today's Off the Couch, and it goes live on all our off the ball channels at 1 o'clock, brought to you in association with Joint Ace. Joint Ace is packed with trace minerals, vitamins and nutrients to support a fit and healthy lifestyle at any age. Check out jointace.com for more details. It is, what time? 9:05 this morning here. Thanks very much for joining us so far this morning on OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. Up next, we're getting into Off the Bull. We're reviewing episodes 5 and 6 of The Last Dance with Owen, Ronan, Kieran Donaghy and Ger and Eoin. If you missed anything in the show today, you can catch it back on our YouTube channel or through our podcasts. We've got over 40 different podcasts released every week on the OTB Podcast Network. Sunday Paper Review with Colin Keys and Shane Keegan. Our Jim Begnan Legends interview. Our Saturday Snooker panel with Ken Doherty and Dennis Taylor, reliving the magic of Taylor's final victory, which was replayed over the course of the weekend on BBC. The latest episode of Off the Brawl with Andy Lee, plus the 1986 World Cup revisited. And that's just from the weekend. That's just all that free content is available in your earballs on the OTB Podcast Network. You'll find that and much more. Subscribe to the OTB AM podcast stream wherever you get yours. We timestamp every 2-hour show into bits so you can scroll through it to whatever you want. We're back with Off the Bull next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the Ball 2019 IMRO Radio Awards Sports Programme of the Year.
Salah takes the shot. Oh, Mo Salah with one of the goals of the season.
Who will see their dreams turn into reality? Whose names will be etched in history forever?
Offtheball.com, best online publisher at the 2019 Spider Awards.
A big breaking story on offtheball.com for you this morning. We have the very latest on the Mayo leaks. We now know what went on in that secretive Mayo County Board meeting.
2019 Irish Sponsorship Awards Best Radio Sponsorship, OTB Super Value GAA Roadshows.
Well, when she comes back, get your arse back here, he said. Starr is out sitting on the swing and Darren O'Sullivan is pushing him.
OTB Sports Radio, live online 24/7 on the Go Loud app.
This is OTB Sports Radio. OTB AM.
Okay, you're very welcome along to Off the Bull. We're here every week chatting about The Last Dance, streaming here in Ireland on Netflix every Monday morning. We've got Off the Ball's Ronan Mullen with us as ever. We've also got Kerry football and Tralee basketball legend Kieran Donaghy here as well. Should also mention he is now officially a TikTok legend with his incredible White Men Can't Jump, doing business online as we speak. More on that later. And of course, every week as well, we've got a host of An Irishman Abroad, Ger and Eoin, also host of An Irishman Abroad Inside Basketball. Lads, you're very welcome. As I say, Kieran, we'll leave you off the hook on Billy Hoyle for just a moment. We'll talk about Michael Jordan and The Last Dance to start things off. What did you make of episode 5 and 6?
Yeah, I loved them. I think they were the best yet. I just love that historic Knicks and Bulls thing of 92, 93. I love them battles and you know and getting to see so much of the relationship with Kobe. And yeah, no, it was excellent from top to bottom, and the increased footage, which I think will get more and more as the series goes on. you know, I think that's given us more of a little insight as well all the time. But I particularly loved how Jordan was talking about Kobe sitting down with his East All-Star teammates, you know, that Kobe is a 19-year-old, had that kind of effect where Jordan's there, he's in Madison Square Garden, he's playing what he probably knows is his last All-Star game. And yeah, they're all sitting talking about a 19-year-old, the Laker boy or the Laker kid they were calling him, that he want to make everything one-on-one. And I love the way Jordan was kind of nearly saying, I hope he tries to make it one-on-one tonight because I just need to show him a few things, which he obviously did get an MVP. But the shape of Jordan is a huge thing I took out of last night. Like, there was a few scenes where he's sitting down afterwards at 35 in the 2008 behind-the-scenes footage, and he's got his top on. Like, and this guy retired at the end of the season. He is in incredible peak, probably peak nearly, you know, basketball-wise, you know, just beyond it, but still the best. Like, he was just beyond his, I think, his peak, which was, you know, if you think if he didn't take those 2 years out in the middle, his peak would have surely been 32, 33, where, you know, when he was 32, he was playing baseball. So, you know, I think that was fascinating as well.
Definitely. I think that I'm not sure if I agree with you on it being the two best episodes so far, which we'll get to in a little while, but I definitely think the Kobe footage at the start from that All-Star game is the best behind-the-scenes footage we've got so far. And I think it just sets the tone for the two episodes, which is Michael Jordan coming to terms with being an old lad and being one of the elder statesmen of the league and getting into a position where he's going to have to hang up the basketball boots.
Yeah, and the hypocrisy of him saying he's trying to make it all one-on-one. Like, so we've just watched 4 episodes explaining that that's exactly what you did. I mean, I do think that maybe the reason why Kieran and myself enjoyed them to the level that we did is that there's an emotional element to this that I think Kobe, you know, I always felt like with Kobe that it was like one of us getting to the NBA. He was a child. It was totally Make-A-Wish Foundation stuff. I followed his career from the time I first heard of him as a 15-year-old. I heard that there's a lad scrimmaging with Philadelphia 76ers, and hasn't even done his junior cert. And you know that word traveled as far as Kildare that this prodigy was in the world. And I was like, that can't be right. That just can't. That's not possible. And we debated it on team buses about how no, that's some bullshit rumor that's doing the rounds. So when this story plays out the way it does, and he is sent to that All-Star game, let's face it, he wasn't starting for the Lakers when he got selected to start for the All-Star team. Seeing him in it, it was just like he was doing the moves that you would hope you would do. He was hot dogging the way you would if you were playing NBA Jam. You were trying to, you know, back down MJ and do the, you know, the back bend into him the way he had on his posters. And then the fact that Kobe is ripped away from people the way he has been, when they dedicated the episode to Kobe, I got a rush of emotion and I got goosebumps on the back of my neck at that bit. And maybe it's because I'm way too connected and I'm way too fond of it and I don't have the journalistic separation that you lads have. But for me, that was an emotional moment. I got fully like, I got overwhelmed a little bit because this is messed up. That shouldn't happen. And the fact that they dedicated the episode to Kobe is testament of when they see this footage of the number one player in the game and the number one subject in the locker room beforehand is this lad, this 19-year-old child that is, you know, if George Karl had put Kobe back in for the fourth quarter, which he didn't, and Kobe held against George Karl for years to come, Kobe would have won the MVP in that game, no question.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because if you talk about what this documentary has done for Michael Jordan and for the NBA as a whole, I think it actually has had a huge impact on the understanding of the man, the understanding of the sport over the last couple of weeks. People who really knew nothing about Michael Jordan are now getting into the intricacies of Scottie Pippen and who was the best second player on the Chicago Bulls. And I wonder if this is actually going to have that sort of impact on
Kobe Bryant, that perhaps people, especially people here in Ireland, might not have fully appreciated just how good Kobe was when he died. And of course, it was a huge news story. And of course, basketball fans would have. But maybe it's actually seeing that moment at the start of episode 5 where Jordan is dealing with him and talking about him with such reverence, well, not reverence, but a hell of a lot of respect. He's slagging him off. This is the sign of respect for Michael Jordan at this time. And people who perhaps aren't familiar with the story might go, right, this kid was really the heir to the throne.
I definitely think there's lots of that kind of stuff in this, in terms of nobody knows the origins of Jordans. They're just something that's in the shop. This week on the show, we got to see this fascinating footage of Michael admitting that he preferred Adidas. And also, one of the most hilarious moments is how his mother convinced him to go and visit Nike, and Nike win him over with what is essentially a kind of an office Christmas banner of the Nike family welcomes the Jordan family. I was like, what? Like, how did they win him over with that? Like, it's obviously the money as well, but it looked so ham-fisted to see the photos of what it actually looked like when they tried to win him over from the shoe that he was adamant he was going to play in Adidas for the rest of his life.
Oh, it's like seeing at the inside of Mark Zuckerberg's a college dorm or something like that. But before things got good for Nike, this is how elementary they actually looked. The banner was incredible, and just the idea that your mother will be grabbing you by the arm and saying, "Come on, we're going to go see Nike now today," is almost just like a hilarious image. Ronan, we might just get your overall thoughts on a couple of episodes, because we'll get stuck in straight away then to the idea of commercialism and Nike and Jordan as a brand.
Yeah, I agree with the two boys. The first few minutes with the Kobe footage, I think, are the highlights of the 2 hours, and it kind of framed the reciprocal respect between the two, because the only reason Jordan's saying that stuff about the Laker kid is because he sees himself in Kobe, and the whole wanting to play one-on-one, and the whole thing of if he takes 4 shots, he's still going to want the ball, and Jordan says, well, he better start effing rebounding then, because he probably realised that himself at that age, that you have to win the respect of your teammates, not just going to keep giving you the ball. And like, I watched Jordan's tribute to Kobe at his memorial a couple of months ago, and you could see how far that relationship developed. That was a brotherly kinship, you know, so it was quite poignant, as Jarlath said, to see his name at the start of the episode. But overall, definitely felt like there was a gear change in these 2 episodes, where I think it owes in large part to the subject matter, which I'm sure we'll get into, especially in episode 6, where they're getting into the sort of inner turmoil and angst that Jordan was going through as a figure in the limelight. And also just the mere fact that the timelines are converging a lot more. Like, aside from the origins of the Air Jordan, I think these 2 episodes are almost entirely in the 90s. So there's not a huge difference between Jordan in his final season and Jordan closing out that first three-peat. So I think that probably owes a lot. The ratio of 80s and 90s has really reduced a lot. And I think as these final episodes come out, we're going to see more and more of that 98 season and the behind-the-scene footage that people are craving.
It's a really good point. I think at times so far you get a really good meaty piece of footage and then it's taken away from you, which obviously is really good filmmaking, and it leaves you wanting more and leaves us with a lot of engine in the tank for the full 10 episodes. But now, as you say, it's all going to be condensed into the end of the 90s. But just on that final flashback, if you want to call it that, let us talk about the Air Jordans, the Jordan ones, wearing them in the garden in 98. Did that bring a tear to your eye, Jarlath?
I think you're overestimating how emotional I get. There's no tears, but I do remember watching that game live, and just like the whole cinematic element of it. I mean, it's obviously calculated enough in that I actually read a piece where someone suggested to Kobe that he might wear the same shoes that he scored 81 points in his final game against Toronto. And he looked at that journalist as if to say, come on, you know that Mike wore those ones in this game specifically because they were about to re-release the ones and he could sell more of them. But there was an element of, Homer pulling out the Wonder Bat. He rocks up with the unlaced ones in his hand. And you just, I remembered at the time going, oh shit. I'd imagine it was the same for the Knicks, that they were like, oh, we're in deep trouble here. I love hearing about the trepidation of other players when he had either had a bad night the night before or someone had said something stupid in the press. Because as we're learning throughout these episodes, developing grudges, whether they were legitimate or not, were the coal that was shoveled into the engine to make this winning occur. I didn't shed a tear when I saw the shoes. It just brought back incredible memories. But I didn't realize was that his feet were actually, bleeding through the socks. Like, I knew that they'd be uncomfortable to wear, but like, that's mad stuff. Like, surely take them off for the fourth quarter. I don't know about you, Kieran, but if that happened even in like schools games, if your shoes were at you that much, you just get someone else to give you their shoes. If you were in the game, you go, well, I'm not going to wear a pair of shoes that are going to destroy my feet.
I think Jordan was on 42 points. So, I think if the rest of us are wearing shoes that were that uncomfortable, you would be looking to take them off or get rid of them. But when you're up around 38 and 39 points and there's a few minutes to go, I think you're going to leave them on and take the pain. But he got a reverse layup in that game against the Knicks with the shoes, which was just, it was amazing. Yeah. It was in one of the montages. It was, he just this knack of getting up in the air and then this flick of his own wrist, I think, to kind of control how far he could throw it. He kind of had it measured how hard to hit himself so that the ball would go a certain distance. But, I think a lot of people that wouldn't have seen a lot of Jordan or, had time to see him in his prime and looking at it now are kind of going, geez, this guy was amazing. Some of the circus shots he had, some of the amazing shots that he took, even going back to episode 3 against Detroit, that one on the break against Lambier, which is a kind of a 360 reverse layup, to protect himself basically because he didn't know what Lambier was going to do. So to be coming up with that at that speed when you're dribbling down the court, and I think it was emphasized in that game where his feet are bleeding through the socks and he's on 42 points and he's still the man at the age profile he's at.
It also, I thought it was amazing at framing the significance of the shoes and him getting to say that line of, look, I wouldn't have got these contracts if my game didn't speak for itself.
Yeah.
Like, you can talk about the shoes all you like, but none of this happens if I'm averaging 2 rebounds, 2 points. Taking us back to 1984 and the signing of that deal, getting to watch Larry Bird rap, truly one of the funnier moments of the series so far. It also threw up another one of my favorite fashion moments. Just a tiny cutaway to a child looking through a link fence wearing the Thriller jacket. You can pause it. I don't have the time code, but like, that to me was the standout fashion moment from this episode. Better than Tony Kukoc's Jordan tracksuit, the actual Thriller jacket being worn by a random punter. Highlight of the series so far for me.
For me, it's the newscaster or whoever was doing the report describing the shoes as hot as a Cabbage Patch doll right now, which is quite dissimilar. Like, what was it? Were they that hot? Like, were Converse, like, for you guys, were Converse ever the thing? Like, did you ever look back and say,
never?
Well, never. Like, I was thinking,
never.
It's amazing.
Never the thing. My first big pair of boots were Nike Air Huaraches, a yellow, a white, and kind of black pair, and they were just like, I remember my mom said the year before she got 2 pairs of boots, and she never asked us. She got 2 pairs of basketball boots for me and my brother. And when I opened the box and he opened the box, she said I could tell straight away that I wanted my brother's boots, like that I was kind of, salivating over these boots. Like, and my own were opened, and yeah, they were grand, but like, Jesus, Connors were unbelievable. Like, and she said she never felt so sorry for someone that day that like I had the wrong boots. So the following year, she made me kind of put down on my list, what type of boots I wanted, and I saw them on a Slam magazine or something, and I got them, and they were my boots, but never Cons. No, even though I loved the old ad with Johnson and Larry Bird is a classic where they actually went from kind of not hating each other, but having a dislike towards each other. And then a day shooting above in Larry's house and Magic, and they become kind of best friends for the rest of their careers off the back of it, even though they were right in competition, but they got to understand each other and what made each other tick. But it was unbelievable. And like, who got fired from Adidas?
Yeah, well, that's the question. I was just about to say that.
Who's the guy who got fired?
Who got hired is the question, right?
Somebody's getting fired quick.
Oh my God,
they took Sonny Vicario, who is the one who said, "Put all your chips on Mike." He was the one that ultimately got hired by Adidas because Adidas realized we messed up there, and he was the one who said you need to put all your chips on Kobe. So it's funny that mirroring of history. But you're so right, Kieran. Cons, admittedly, if you showed up in a pair of Larry Johnson's cons, those were the only cons. Those or the Kevin Johnson cons, they were the only ones that could be accepted. But as Nas put it best, they were a lightsaber. The understanding was if you had these shoes, you could play better. That was the trick of the marketing. The whole idea that the league banned them suggested that they were giving you an unfair advantage. And, like Kieran, better than anyone, it is a mind game. And if you believed you could play better in the shoes, sure, that was half the battle.
Yeah. Geez, these Larry Johnson Converse, I'm just after Googling them here. Oh my God.
Yeah, they were trucks. That's why I wheeled these out today, because I bought these retros a while back. And these were the Reebok Omni pumps. I mean, lads, they weigh like a bag of sugar. They make no sense whatsoever in the context of what you're actually being asked to do in the sport. But yeah, the LJs were atrocious looking yokes, but they were the only acceptable cons, yeah.
Do we have any other fashion takeaways from the two episodes? Like I certainly wanted to just give quick tribute to Michael Jordan's get up just when he's walking around the streets in Barcelona in 1992. Amazing shorts and t-shirt combination. And also his Augusta sweater vest, casually wearing that while I was on the fairways playing golf before, during NBA finals and stuff like that. That is the ultimate mic drop. When Michael Jordan sidles up on the tee, it's already a scary enough experience, especially if he wants to bet like 10 grand on it. But then he puts on the Augusta sweater vest.
10 grand.
I mean, it's business.
10 grand a hole on.
I thought Seinfeld's shoulder pads were the other fashion takeaway. That's actually a lovely bit with Seinfeld taking the piss out of Phil's blackboard with all the plays on it. But yeah, those shoulder pads were NFL level shoulder pads. So that was my other fashion takeaway.
What about you, Kieran? Anything else before we get off the catwalk here and move on to some other talking points?
No, like Kukoc's tracksuit's probably the coolest tracksuit I've seen so far in the whole show. People might laugh at that, but I think that's the coolest shit of all time. Especially if you're going to be Tony Kukoc and you're going back then, that tracksuit is fire. Yeah. You might look at it now and it's a bit baggy or whatever, but
no, it's gorgeous.
He's also it's class. It's an absolute top tracksuit. I was online this morning after watching, kind of Googling up some more Jordan stuff. Basically, I'm off as if I don't have enough Jordan stuff. I'm off trying to look for more.
That market's going to skyrocket now.
Big time.
You can't go into a shop at the moment, so everybody's shopping online anyway. So the world is your oyster. What are you Googling right now after watching The Last Dance? If you've got any bit of nostalgia and any bit of a fashion sense, you're looking for Air Jordans, right?
Well, the last time we were on here, Kieran made a point to take the piss out of BJ Armstrong's shirt, which I think I had in my head a different shirt. But I went back and looked at the actual shirt, and you were right. Pure gick, absolutely horrendous, and not even from a different time. He's wearing this in the present day. A horrid shirt. But I thought BJ Armstrong had the best quote of the two episodes. And that was where they flash back to 92, 93, and he points out that this is when I realized he's not actually just better at basketball than us. He's doing something else because he has figured out how to win no matter what the circumstances. I thought that was chills in the back of the neck for me. And just really true. Just really true. He could manipulate the energy of the game whichever way he wanted. He had mastered the skills to the point of genius. So now they were dribbling the ball around and he was doing something else.
It also strikes me as well that a surefire way to completely piss Michael Jordan off is just to compare him to anybody. Maybe if you compared him to Magic in 91, it would have been an acceptable thing to do. But you don't go comparing him to Clyde Drexler, for example. Me being compared to him, I took offense to that, he says.
Yeah, but that's the thing about the Air Jordans even, and they've been given only a fraction of the timeline so far, which is fair enough. This is a basketball documentary, but like the percentage of Michael Jordan's fortune is owed in large part to what he's done with Nike. And if he had joined Converse or Adidas, he's just another block in the wall. Whereas the Air Jordans gave him this license to be individualistic. They referenced it in the thing. Nike was like a tennis player's brand. So Michael Jordan wanted to go out on his own. He wanted to be seen as one of a kind. And as you said, to be compared to anyone, even Drexler was a pretty good player. He saw this as the ultimate, slap in the face. So I think the Air Jordan thing it was obviously hugely beneficial for him, but Nike probably couldn't believe their luck either.
Yeah, absolutely. It was kind of a two-way street to that, making him the Arthur Ashe of basketball at that point, I think is how they put it. We should talk about the dream team. And you mentioned Tony Kukoc there, and we do guess, I was waiting for this all season long, we do guess the pure, unbridled, violent joy of Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan going after him in two separate games. And I think Kukoc comes out of it pretty well. I think Jerry Krause comes out of it pretty well. The Krause-o-meter ticking in his favour again this week, in my opinion. Yeah. Let's just talk firstly, though, about Isaiah Thomas. We have archive footage here of Jordan saying no Isaiah Thomas stuff, but in the new interviews, he does come out and actually addresses it. He says, no matter how much I hate him, I would still have him as the number 2 point guard ever. And he says that he would have made a difference in a negative way, no matter what way you spin it.
It was nice that he gave him that. I felt it was nice that he gave him that kind of, because we were saying on last week's show how good Isaiah was. It's kind of, you don't get that from being a viewer if you didn't know the backstory to it. But it was nice for him to say that. But look, I think the biggest thing is, and I think this is where it was always pointed at Jordan, and it obviously wasn't all Jordan. This was nobody wanted him on the team. That was the end of it, really. And I think Jordan saying that he would have had a bad effect on the morale. And as you watch through the Olympics, you see how the morale builds and builds to where they're kind of an unbreakable bunch by the end of it, and they have anybody who can step up and win a game. And of the whole trip, with the gold medal games and the basketball and the practices, the best thing that Jordan said about the Olympic experience was the bonding with the other players and almost that friends for life. And what happens when you go away with a team for 6 or 7 weeks and you're with each other all the time and you're spending so much time for each other. You don't normally do that. They do that at an All-Star weekend where they show up and they might have a night out and they say, yeah. But this is actually, you get to know what the guy's family are in the room with. You're talking to them all the time. You're having coffees, your dinners, lunches, trainings, playing cards till 5 o'clock in the morning with Michael Jordan, which is obviously a horror show because I love the way that Barkley was talking about that he would be shoving you all in pretty quickly if you want to have a good hand to go against them with the way he bet when they were playing cards together. So, yeah, look, it was, the Olympics showed as well, I think Magic had 5 championships. He was coming towards the end of his career, but I think going into the Olympics, he found that this is a chance because he didn't really play that much in that season. He found this is a chance to kind of let Jordan know that he was still, the top dog. And I love the way that kind of goes from, that's the way Magic started to at the end of the Olympics, even that famous game, which was the greatest game of all time, supposedly, where the two teams played each other, and Christian Laettner didn't see the floor, and Barkley and Magic are going at Jordan hard, and then they just realize, look, this guy is on another level. And I think they get into a quiet bus afterwards, and Magic said to Larry something like, we shouldn't have pissed him off. And that was the sign over from Magic. Even though Jordan, if you think of it at this stage in 92, Jordan has 2 championships. That's what he has. He's scoring titles and he's MVPs and he's dunk championships and all that, but he still only has 2 titles at this stage. But you can very quickly see Magic realizing that there's a lot more in the tank for this fella and that he is of a different breed. And just the fact that the way they talk about him being non-human, playing the 36 holes of golf, playing cards till 5 o'clock in the morning, going to training, and still having loads of energy at training. He was truly, his burn and his desire for a competitive edge, which we'll probably get to when he talks about the gambling later on. It's ever evident in anything he does. That goes back to the Nike. It goes back to him covering the Reebok logo. He wanted Nike to be the best because he was Nike. So he was going to make sure everything was done that Nike would want. And he knew that the Jordan brand was going to be linked in with the Jordan brand was going to be linked in with Nike. And that's and as he said, everybody online shopping now, that's, that brand again is off through the roof, so he wanted to be the best at everything he did, whether it was cards, golf, tiddlywinks, the coin tossing stuff with the boys in the Bull Stadium.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he's
That was
betting
great.
$20. He's betting $20 with guys who are, you know, getting $150 to be there for the night, like, you know.
Yeah.
And he's making their night by them beating them. They're going home telling everybody I beat Jordan. But you can just tell that the competitive burning desire in him, which really in the Olympics you see it visibly out in the court. You see how good he is and how better he is than everybody else.
Just on the Olympics, I am calling bullshit on the idea that this was anybody but Michael Jordan who had anything to do with this.
100%. I'm so glad you said it.
Like
because Kieran, everything you've said there, it ties in completely with look. In The Sopranos, Tony Soprano never orders a killing, but he says to people closest to him, "This is who I would kill." That's totally what happened here. Mike would talk to Ahmad Rashad and whoever his buddies were and let the message go out that I won't play on this team if this fella's in the same locker room as me. And everything else we've learned in terms of the grudges and the fire that those fed, this bullshit that he's feeding us of. I never, Jesus Christ, I never mentioned Isaiah Thomas to anybody.
Great guy,
In the
top
face
two
of
point guard.
I think he's great. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, and it's really obvious. And in some ways, it's kind of funny. You got to laugh at it in some way.
But would you say, Jared? Would you say if Isaiah is a different character? And he still has a falling out with Jordan, but that he's a super nice guy the rest of his career, and he's a really nice guy, and Magic wants him on the team, and Larry wants him on the team, and all the guys. You can be damn sure there would have been a Tony O'Donoghue, Roy Keane situation where they would have got the two of them to sit down and say, "Okay, Mike, we know you hate Isaiah because he walked off. Isaiah, say sorry. You're obviously the second best point guard in the league at the moment. You should be on this team, and we need to make this work. This is USA. We're going to go out and do it together." No.
Well, I think
Jordan made it obvious. He probably didn't want him. But there was nobody screaming for him, and I think it's wrong to solely point out Jordan. I think if they all wanted him, they would have found a way to make it work, or they would have at least made an effort. Whereas, as of now, it was just kind of. I know you're right in essence, of course, but he was.
But you think because nobody else was going, hold on a minute, where's Isaiah Thomas? But in the same way, I think the Roy Keane analogy is good because the whole team did want Roy, but then there was a part of the team that was like, oh geez, it's great not to have that in the room anymore. But I think that they weren't in the same position. Like, let's face it.
But also,
planets were about to align in terms of articulating to the world exactly how big this man was. And sometimes everyone's a little bit behind in catching on to that notion. And the whole Dream Team experience was everyone, the world, Magic, Larry, and the NBA catching on to this isn't just the best player in the NBA. This is the most influential and most popular sports person on the planet.
But the notion that Isaiah Thomas's inclusion would have in any way derailed the Dream Team is totally nonsensical. This was not a competition. This was a coronation for the Dream Team. This was all this was these are the best American players. Let's honor them, give them a gold medal, and basically put American basketball back on the map. We're tired of being embarrassed by these other countries. So Isaiah Thomas wouldn't have affected. They would have walked the gold medal anyway. This was like the Monstars in Space Jam rocking up to the Olympics and trashing the place. So I think it's just unfair. Isaiah deserved that commemoration as much as anybody. It's not as if
fuck Isaiah Thomas. No way.
You see, Magic comes across as this affable guy, and he is. But like the famous example when he clobbered Isaiah coming down the lane in the finals, and then in this footage alone where he's jabbing at Michael Jordan in the practice games. So like it's not as if these all had a competitive streak. Larry Bird was in bar fights. He walked off the court with the Pistons. Like, these were not perfect people. You know what I mean? They're making Isaiah Thomas to be some scoundrel.
Yeah, and also, just on the Roy Keane analogy, I think it's a little bit different because in that you have a manager versus a player. And in this, it was very much the head coach on side. And I was just going back to Dream Team this morning. On page 82, it goes through the fact that Rod Thorne was obviously involved with the Bulls, had to get Jordan on board for the Dream Team. And Jordan said to Rod Thorne, "Rod, I don't want to play if Isaiah Thomas is on the team." Now, no one on this is just to quote Jack McCallum in the book, no one on the committee had to communicate that to Chuck Daly because Daly knew it himself. As Jordan had told the coach in an early phone call, I don't want to play if Isaiah Thomas is on the team. And Chuck let it be known that he would not fight for Isaiah, which I think is a bit cutting and fairly ruthless from Chuck Daly. But the head coach,
his head coach.
The coach is on Jordan's side here. So there's actually not that much of an important friction when it comes to, say, what might have happened with Roy Keane, for example.
I tell you, any fella that brushes his hair as much as Chuck Daly did, you'd be damn sure he wanted to be the coach of the dream team. And if it meant leaving Isaiah Thomas on his ass back in Detroit, it was going to be done. Chuck Daly wanted to be over in Barcelona, combing back the hair, looking suave. He played golf with Michael Jordan every day. How do you think Isaiah felt about it?
So maybe a better analogy is the international rules team, Kieran. That let's say Mick O'Dwyer is coaching the international rules team, and Charlie Redmond says, "I will not have Nux or Buckley on this team." And Mick O'Dwyer saying, "Well, I won't fight for him." I mean, that is a nice wrinkle there. That even Chuck Daly wasn't a big fan.
Chuck knew the Pistons, Chuck knew the his bad boys era team was gone as well. So he was probably thinking next level again. And what else? What's out here next? For me? What's next if I'm a part of this team? He knew what the team was going to be. He knew when all the names started coming together, he was going to be like, "This is going to be unbelievable. I want to be a part of this, no matter what."
One little detail on the dream team, which I am fully obsessed with. I just find the dream team story, that Monte Carlo practice, just the fact that you lined up the Beatles of basketball, managed to convince them all to play together, got the results they did in the fashion they did, and changed the face of sports the way they did, and introduced the world to this joy that we are all experiencing now. There's another game that isn't mentioned in this, and that is where the college players took on the dream team, and it's in a documentary and it's mentioned in the book, where they took the best college players, including Chris Webber and Grant Hill at the time, and brought them in to prove to the dream team that you could be beaten. And they did. The dream team actually lost one game to this team of college players. And if people want to hunt out that book that you just mentioned, that's the one there. Jack McCallum's book, Dream Team. It is an unbelievable read and just explains that game and how it came about. That the dream team did lose a game. I mean, I love that wrinkle as well.
There was genius in Chuck Daly in that last. That's the story about that. Not that the college team beat them. Yeah, that's the big story, but it's the actual story behind the scene of Chuck Daly. Not putting Jordan in enough, not playing him enough, not playing gammy rotations. New fellas were in trouble, left them out there. He wanted them to lose. I think they played them the next day and beat them so bad. I think certain fellas might have quit after it. I think they about, if this is what the NBA is about, I don't want anything to do with it. I think that was but genius by Chuck Daly to have him. Like he told nobody, don't mention the scoreline. The scoreline was taken down off the wall. Nobody wanted to see it. But when the reporters came in and started interviewing after the game they lost, they were like, they knew there was tension between something the dream team and something happened. But unbelievable by Chuck Daly, and a great coach maneuver to maybe put into your bag if you're a coach up and coming out there and you have a team that gets ahead of themselves and you play a game and you purposely try and inflict a bit of realization on your players that you're going to have to work harder if you want to achieve the ultimate goal. And I think Chuck Daly needed to bring them down to earth, because it's quite conceivable that they could have gone out there and just got caught by a Croatia or a Spain because they just weren't ready. That's not out of the realms of possibility. But what you had coming to the end of the Olympics was a team that it had 11 Hall of Famers on it. You can't even put.
They were never losing.
With that team. They were never losing. But I think
that said, Kieran, that Croatia team was strong, and I thought they handled it really well in just showing that, of all the players we're seeing in all of this, Tony Kukoc is the player in his prime. If he's playing in this NBA, he's a killer. He's the prototype Kevin Durant, floor spacer, handle the ball at 6'11",
shoot the
drive
shot.
left-handed. he's the dream. I just found
he would
so
be perfect.
funny though. It was so funny when he goes, I do not even know them. I don't know why. I found that. Like, that was the funniest bit for me. I watched it with my son this morning. We both lay back on the couch laughing because they gave him it was an absolute nightmare for the lad, what they did to him in that first game. I thought that was beautifully covered. What did you think?
I think when you Scotty on you for a predominant period of time with his length, and when he takes a break, that Michael Jordan picks you up and starts getting at you worse, you can see why he threw in the towel pretty quickly in that first game.
Well, Michael Wilpon says that they were out of line, which again is bullshit. Like, come on, you're double teaming their best player.
But he's a bull. He's just talking on a Bulls front there, I would say.
Yeah, but Scotty coming out and saying his future teammate isn't good enough to play in the NBA
that was hilarious.
Maybe let's chill there, Scotty. You know. But
it shows you how much they hated Jerry Krause even in '93. Like, this guy was. We're talking about a lot of the '98 hatred. Like, you can tell how Phil Jackson and kept his team from exploding on this guy, or how vice versa, or how that didn't explode earlier. I think Phil Jackson did a huge part to play. A bar probably the last year where he just wasn't even in conversation with Jerry Krause, but he was still the guy who stood up to Pippen in the bus to quiet him down. But Jerry Krause, he's a winner so far, but it's going to turn bad for him in the end. But he's very much a winner so far.
I did think that organization, when he started saying this is a great organization that's winning these, I mean, that was they basically had that clip that if there was one thing that's circling these lads' heads, it's that Jerry Krause saying, first and foremost, this is a great organization. I mean, that is to an extent like Muhammad Ali's manager saying, look, this fight was won by the corner men as well. You're dealing with a genius, a sporting genius. Credit where credit's due. You're dealing with two. Like, I still think Scotty is an underrated genius in all of this. I don't think he'll ever get his due. But like, the whole Kukoc thing is brought about by that little round man disrespecting these two people. So Tony really bore the brunt of that hatred.
Well, like Jordan's saying in this, that he's willing to put someone in front of his actual kids when it comes to approaching Kukoc, which is bollocks. Like, first of all, you're not his actual kids. You are his associates in a business here, which is predicated on winning games. Like, Krause believed that signing Kukoc would give them the best opportunity to win championships, or a better opportunity to win championships.
He was right.
More championships. He was right. We did a classic game club there before this, and like we spoke about the '97 finals when Kukoc was amazing. Like, not just about 3 threes and that crucial game 4, for example. This was an important part of the jigsaw for the Bulls. Krause was doing his job. Like, you've got to admire him for that. Like, again, as you say, Kieran, Krause is going to get slaughtered before this thing is out. He already got slaughtered in the first couple of episodes, but he's had a good 2 weeks here. And really, in the mid-90s, you kind of have to doff your cap to what he was doing, because it took balls to actually go out there and knowingly try and get Kukoc with the information that Jordan and Pippen will be unbelievably pissed off with him. They're calling him, like, they're giving him slurs to his face about his height, like the whole smoking jibe during this episode when Jordan offers him a cigar and is like, actually, no, smoking stunts growth, Jerry, and then pulls the cigar away. Like, they're horrible to his face. So for Jerry Krause to still be going out there as GM and doing these, pulling off these moves, like approaching someone like Tony Kukoc, I think you just have to commend the guy.
Yeah, and this is 19. This is 19.
Give Scotty his contract.
Well,
there is that.
There was just the fact that it was, there was Europeans in the league at that time, but it was still very much on kind of charted waters, really, and was, can these European fellas stick with the game over here? And obviously, we know today, like, that some of the best players are from overseas, but that Kukoc, for Krause to seek out this guy in the troubles that were going on there at the time and realise and go to games or get footage of games or whatever way he did it, but to realise that this guy was going to be the future, and he was a huge part of the second three-peat. So it's it goes full circle in the end. But yeah, you can certainly see at the time that Scotty and Mike, are kind of going, yeah, this guy might be the shit out here, but this is the NBA, and this is how we play defense. And coaches, when you're the best player and you can't get your hands on the ball, the rest of the team starts struggling because they're out of sync. They're used to their best player getting touches, making things happen for others. And here they are, a powerhouse like Croatia, getting beaten the way they were, because that Yugoslavia team the few years previous was just unbelievable altogether.
Absolutely. The other thing that we should talk about is how Michael Jordan and his relationship with gambling has been dealt with over the last couple of episodes. Ronan, what did you think of this in terms of how the documentary makers dealt with it? How big or how much, I guess, was Michael Jordan actually cut down in the media from your point of view when it came to these stories about him being in an Atlantic City casino, or actually the big sums of money he was gambling on the golf course?
Yeah, I'm kind of a little bit conflicted. Like I'm a big fan of American Life, but I do think their moral compass rather is a bit skewed on certain things, like this total anti-gambling thing. Like, I'm not a gambler by any means, but I think in the context of what other players have done in the 80s and 70s in baseball, for example, like you can Google the stories. I don't need to go into them here, but like that Michael Jordan, like they're not comparable in any way, but the OJ case kind of sparked something in American culture, I think, where just this insatiable need to see what people are doing when they're not on the court or playing their game. Like Michael Jordan, people love building people up and then tearing them down. And I thought that this was just a way of doing that with him. And I don't know what you guys think about that, but I just thought they had to find something.
I disagree.
That book that came out, even the author himself said he was surprised by how much it blew up, because it wasn't the done thing at the time. Now, fast forward to cancel culture in 2020, and it very much is the done thing. And I think Jordan almost had a Barbra Streisand effect on it, where by refusing to talk to the media about it, he almost drew more attention to it. And it was just such a conflicting thing for me. I wasn't sure what side I fell down on, to be honest.
Charles, what did you think?
See, I disagree. And even though I come from a gambling background, and horse racing is, my family's business for many years, I think that the issue here wasn't an obsession with what people do when they're away from the game. I think that this was connected to the social justice issue. I think that presenting both of those together was important, because not only are you not going to wade in as the most powerful person in sports, but you are going to gamble amounts of money that could feed an awful lot of people in poverty-stricken areas. There's a morality in that. There is a turning of a blind eye on both issues. I thought fair dues to Mike for allowing Obama to express his disappointment with him during this period, because let's not forget, and it's come up in the media this week, that the independence of this documentary has to be questioned because Mike has his hands on the reins. He did allow maybe the most beloved president of all time to express how disappointed he was that he didn't speak up, especially in that election race, and that comment of even Republicans buy shoes, how much that affected the Black community and how much of an opportunity lost it was. The gambling thing really, I think Mike still doesn't get it. I still think that there's an element of Tiger Woods in this. Tiger felt he should be allowed do these things because of how difficult his life was and because of all the sacrifices he'd made. Mike felt, I should be allowed gamble this money that I've earned. Yeah, there's something in that. There's a point there. But the difference is that you're choosing I think people would have been okay with it if he was doing an awful lot of social justice work and very politically active, and God, he is giving all of this money back, and I'm sure he did. Like, there was reference to an awful lot of the charity work that he did unbeknownst to the media. But the optics of blowing $500,000 on a round of golf when your people of your demographic are struggling in the way they are, the optics of charging what he did for the sneakers that he sold, it ultimately the point that was being made there, I think we're going to see part of the reason he left the game.
And just the Jesse Helms thing, he was a reprehensible character. There's no getting away from that. But should sports people be prescribed role model status? Like, it shouldn't be a mandated thing. I don't think you don't have to, just because you're an unbelievable sports person doesn't mean.
But he's not a sports person.
No, but like
there
the
comes
Muhammad
a point
Ali,
when he's not a sports person.
Yeah, but the Muhammad Ali comparison is a fair one because they're on a similar Mount Rushmore, so to speak. But Muhammad Ali was a villain anyway. He had nothing to lose in that time of his life. He saw the begrudgery against his success and was like, well, sure, I have nothing to lose. So he went to bat for his community and deserves untold respect for that. But Michael Jordan, quite the opposite. He was one of the first successful black African Americans, walking a very fine line. Like, he had to be very prim and proper to make his money. It wasn't as if he was following the footstep of somebody else. He was very much an originator. And I think it's very easy retrospectively to look back and say he should have done this, he should have done that. But he was like, you have to look after yourself at a certain point, and nobody's perfect.
Well, that is the thing. That is what he did. He did look after himself. The conversation I had with Roland Lazenby, the author of that book that I mentioned, Michael Jordan, The Life, conversation I had with him last week was exactly what you were saying, Ronan, that we don't know the North Carolina that he grew up in. We don't know how racist that area was, how lynchings were a thing, and how much black people from that community were raised to believe that we can aspire to success in business. And that is drilled into him from a young age, whether it's directly or it goes in by osmosis. But what I struggled with here was I had that conversation with Roland Lazenby last week, but I didn't know that his mother had actually approached him to make a statement.
That was interesting.
Helms. And he had turned his back on, his chief advisor and said, I don't know the man, but I'll make a donation. I mean, like you say, he did prioritize himself.
100%. It's I think there's actually a line in it where he says, was that selfish? Was my behavior selfish at the time? And he says, probably.
He said he never thought of himself as an activist.
Yes, it's an exact same quote.
How many people do think of themselves as activists? Like, this man's a professional sports person at the top of his field. He doesn't have time to be going out, putting out fires on a social sphere all the time.
He never thought of himself as a shoe salesman either.
I think he did to a certain extent.
There's a few semantics that, he uses and are get thrown around in terms of his interviews that are, Mike, that doesn't make a whole load of sense. I doubt anybody ever puts that to him. I'm not addicted to gambling. I'm addicted to competition. Mike, come on.
He's got a competitive problem. That's another quote from this as well. Like, I think that when I'm watching this and I'm listening to Michael Jordan describing himself as selfish, when he describes himself, when he says, maybe I'm not the person you should be following, there's definitely a part of me that wants to give him a free pass at that point. That is like, okay, well, at least you realize the role that you possibly could have played, but because of the selfish streak, you realize you are not going to play it. However, do you automatically reach a point where that free pass is no longer acceptable? I'm not sure. Like, maybe Michael Jordan actually didn't have a lot to contribute at that point. We hear about the private financial contribution he gave to Gant at that point going up against Jesse Helms, and that is how he felt he could have made the biggest contribution. Maybe he felt being on the pulpit, a la Muhammad Ali, was not the way for Michael Jordan to make a difference. I accept he
didn't want it. Like, I think it's pretty. This whole Republican buy sneakers too was a kind of a comment he made in the back of the bus to the boys as well. He said, like, I think he said, I'm a basketball player. He never thought of himself as an activist. He didn't want to do it. I've had people approach me, will you run for this party? Will you do this for this party? Will you join this fella? Will you give him? It's if you've no real interest in it, and I don't think Jordan had, you just don't want to do it, and I've said no to that loads of times because it's just I just don't have any real interest in it, and I don't want to be a part of it.
Hold the phone, Kieran. Hold the phone.
Yeah.
Let's say Kerry people are being discriminated against, and some would say they are already, but let's say they're being discriminated against and living in poverty for the most part, and the rest of the country demonizes them, and you are among the most wealthy Kerry men in the country.
Yeah.
do you step back and go, well, you know what, my number one thing's football?
Well, I think he pumped money into him, whatever I don't know what the amount was, but he sent a donation, which I'm sure was generous enough, because he knew he wasn't going to do the other thing, which they wanted him to do, was to come out and kind of speak out for him and give him a foot up in this race. And I know you're making a good point, Jarlath, but there's a point to me then saying that he just didn't have any interest in it. He didn't want to do it, and every spare minute of time that he wasn't working on his craft of basketball, that he wasn't doing a commercial, or that he wasn't being hounded for autographs left, right, and centre. I think Jordan's piece was, and I think this goes back to the gambling and the golf course. I think Jordan's love of golf, to be honest, is be by himself for 10 hours and be able to have the competition, to be able to have the fun, the crack, the cigars, and not have any of the bullshit that constantly followed him around for every period. Like, I thought the intro to episode 6, the fame, the pressure, the before, the after the game, I always knew that he was mega famous, but I think that was the first glimpse that I ever saw where I'm saying, this is why this fella quit. Like, this is 100% why this fella stepped away from the game. Like, he just didn't want to do it anymore. He didn't want all that came with all that anymore. The constant, the game against Atlanta where there's 65,000 people in to see him. Like, they're in to see Jordan. Yeah, they're in to see the Bulls. They're in to see Jordan is the main ticket.
And he's trapped. Yeah.
And he's trapped. And I had Dave Hopla, who worked with Jordan. He's the best shooting coach, one of the best shooting coaches in the world. His records, I don't know if you've ever seen him, Jarlath, but his records are absolutely amazing, and what he's able to do. And to see him do he did a live thing in the complex for all the kids in Tralee. He shot 283 shots. He made 277. He missed 6 shots. And these are 3-pointers, and everything is from the free throw out, and it is all straight on. But just to see a guy make that many shots is amazing. And he said he used to be with Jordan at camps in Berlin, in Germany. And he's sponsored by Jordan. He's got all the Jordan gear. And he said he was sitting inside in a restaurant, and Jordan came in by himself with about 6 security guards. And he went up to a spot in the restaurant, and he sat down and he ate by himself. And Dave Hopla, I remember Dave Hopla looking up. Dave Hopla was with a few people having great crack wine, best of laugh. And he said he walked out of the restaurant that night and he felt sorry for Michael Jordan. That's Jordan sitting by himself in a restaurant getting his food in, because he needs 6 security standing there so nobody comes up and asks him for photos or autographs. And I think 93, as much as that episode went on last night, I was kind of like going, Jesus, he actually did need a break. I was all, there was loads of theories of why he left and what the reasons were, but he's to me, he looked completely burnt out. He's lying back and he's having a cigar and he's got the glass of wine and he's kind of going, this is I'm about ready right now. I'm about ready right now. Yeah, I won't miss it. And I think that was sad. That was a sad bit for me, because obviously the year and a half away re-energized the appetite for it again. But right then and there, he knew he was the best. He knew they were the best. And can I do another year of this? And the answer was obviously no. But I just thought that was a fascinating intro to episode 6.
I definitely underestimated how much that public profile played into his decision to step away. I knew it was in the background, but in episode 6, it's framed very much in the foreground. And as Kieran said, that opening line where he's reciting the commercial, spiel, and the tedium of that, just repeating it over and over again, almost summed it up perfectly. This is what he was going through. This was his day to day. And we saw clips of him hanging out with the security team at the stadium, and that was his normal life, apparently. A lot of the uncut footage that isn't used in this documentary is just reams and reams of him walking around with these security guys, because they're the only people that he could hang around with. And
he's in his own little dressing room there. That's the other thing that I was like, I heard Bill Simmons talk about this, that he couldn't get changed in the normal dressing room area because of the hassle that came with that. So we all know what it's like. The crack is in the dressing room.
Yeah.
But he didn't even have that.
Yeah. But it's not even as if he couldn't go to the bar, he couldn't go to nightclubs. Even the fact that going to casinos and going to the high rolling tables, those exclusive paying sort of tables, meant that he had to only be with a certain amount of people. And similarly on a golf course, playing 36 holes a day, you're in one way you're limited to a certain amount of people. So I think those two reasons, the reasons those were so much hobbies for him, was the exclusivity and just being able to step away from the limelight.
I just want to come back to the social justice question just for one last point. I know we've all has our say on it, and I think it's very interesting the conversation that's come up here about whether or not you reach a point in your athletic fame that it becomes unavoidable for you to not speak out on certain issues. Some people will say, regardless of the size of your platform, if you have a platform, you should be using it for good, a la Colin Kaepernick. Now, what we can say for sure is that addressing these issues was not to the forefront of the mind of Jason Hare or the people involved in creating The Last Dance, because if it was, they would 100% have sat down with Craig Hodges for a conversation about what happened in the 1990s. It is the single biggest omission from the entire 10 episodes of The Last Dance. It's, for me, the biggest flaw with the 10 episodes, because I really wanted to see the subject covered well. I think we've had Hodges on the show actually a couple of years ago, and he talks about being run out of the league after the 1992 championship, I think it is. They end up in the White House, and he shows up in a dashiki. He's written a letter to George Bush expressing his discontent with the treatment of minorities, about the invasion of Iraq. It's quite controversial. We don't know if George Bush ever read the letter. He probably didn't, says Craig Hodges. But what we do know after that point is that Hodges files a lawsuit about being blackballed from the league. This is the early 1990s at this point. He talks about the NBA's lack of black owners at this point. He speaks out about racism within the NBA and across America. But crucially, he also has a go and criticizes Jordan for failing to address the, judicial injustice around the United States in the wake of the Rodney King controversy. So this is also a huge part of what happens in the early 90s in the league. There is allegedly a conversation between Craig Hodges and Magic and Jordan during this time, where he asks the two boys, can we actually boycott the league for a while? And the two lads are like, no, that's way too controversial at this point. Craig Hodges is on the record in the past, and now we see this in the documentary about Jordan not showing up to the White House in 92. Hodges is on the record in the past as Jordan saying, fuck Bush, I didn't vote for him. Like, that is a crucial omission from the documentary if Jordan has actually said that as one of the reasons why he doesn't show up. Like in the documentary, they say he was playing golf or something. Now, I accept that this is only one man's word, but for me, he is worth a conversation. Like, you go through the book Long Shot, which was released in 2017, and he puts forward the theory, and I'm not sure if I agree with this, but Hodges' theory is that he is one of the few who can stand up to Jordan because of his education and the edge that gave him. He said that Jordan had no education and no education in the struggle of their people in North Carolina. I'm not sure if I agree with that personally, but Hodges has said that. And it's June 1991, he makes that point about Magic and about Jordan not going with a boycott. And then the final point I just want to make from this, just going back through my notes from 2017, in his absorbing book, Hodges stresses how he tried repeatedly to persuade Jordan to break with Nike and go into the sneaker business for himself with the aim of creating jobs in the black communities. Jordan argued he was not in a position to take control, while he was tainted by allegedly saying Republicans buy sneakers too. This is all creating a fascinating picture about what the factors were in Michael Jordan and his lack of a stance on political issues. And Craig Hodges might have been wrong, he might have been right, who knows? I just would have loved to have seen Jason Hare sit down with him and actually get his view of the story. A teammate of Michael Jordan's, an important teammate, got blackballed from the NBA. That is an important piece of information.
I think it's a whole new documentary though, isn't it? And it really does connect up the dots of how carefully crafted this is, and how, you know, Michael's hand in it would have nixed that as an idea right out the gate.
Well, that is exactly it. I think we know the answer to why this isn't included, because it is a Michael Jordan documentary. Like, I'm not sure does that taint things for you or not? Like, as I say, when it comes to the actual political question of Michael Jordan, part of me was definitely feeling, I can see why people give him a free pass on this when we hear his side of things. I guess you have to question, why am I so easily giving him a free pass on this? It is because of the one-sided nature of the picture we are being given in The Last Dance. Like,
well, I think part of it is, you know, contained in the title. This is The Last Dance. This isn't warts and all. We're watching the dance to a large extent. It's not as grimy and as gritty as we'd hope. You know for a fact that he's drawn a red line through a lot of footage that would be even more eye-opening. As I pointed out last week on this very podcast, what are we seeing? A lot of lads smoking cigars and playing golf and getting off planes. I mean, you hung around the team for the full year with these cameras. You tell me they only came out then? I mean, it is definitely still under the banner of NBA entertainment.
Yeah.
And, you know, Jason Hare is a good director, and the Fab Five is a great documentary. But I bet even with that, there's aspects of that he couldn't lift the lid on fully.
I would say, well, we certainly went into this with our eyes wide open. I didn't think this was going to be some groundbreaking journalistic enterprise. Like, either this was going to get made under Jordan's auspices or it wasn't going to get made at all. And in that circumstance, I'm going to want to see the documentary. So I think we are getting nuggets out of it that we probably didn't anticipate. And Jordan himself said people mightn't be overly impressed with him by the time this is all said and done. I did think the Obama comments were noteworthy. He could easily have nixed them.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Jason Hare interviewed some of these people and brought it to Jordan, and Jordan was like, nah. But like, he did leave some stuff in there that he could quite easily have taken out. And
yeah,
again, there have been articles in the last week. People are quite disappointed that it probably isn't getting into the grimier stuff. But, you know, I think people kind of knew it. They should have known what they were getting when Jordan signed off on this doc, you know.
For sure. Yeah, I can't argue with that. I think that I'm not surprised. And like, I think it's just a criticism of one thread that we were all looking forward to seeing how well they would address it. It's almost this intangible thing in the story of Michael Jordan now that I guess, are we almost playing, are we kind of guilty of the same thing that the media in the United States were in the 90s? That what is the most negative thing that you can pick out at this point and dig down into it?
Yes. We are. Stop digging. Enjoy the documentary.
Well, yeah, there's definitely an element of it. Like, I mean, I'm on a separate level entirely, 100%. It's an enjoyable thing, but I definitely think we should be asking questions about.
No, the points you're making are valid, but I think this documentary is trying to get 14 years of Jordan's career in, along with Phil Jackson, Rodman, Steve Kerr, Scottie Pippen, all these other big characters, weave in footage that they have from a full season, which is, if you do that for a full season, you would have loads of stuff anyway. Never mind trying to get in the history of what got us to 98, which is what the producer is doing in this. So, you know, I would say there's probably, you're thinking of the few bad things that missed the cut. I bet you there's still other good stuff that didn't make the cut either, just because it still is only 10 hours, you know, it still is only 10 hours really, like, you know, and there's a whole lot of storytelling in this, as well as obviously the way he's trying to mix it in going forward and back, that's why he's doing that. He's telling the backstory with original footage, then he's throwing in a bit of 98 stuff. So, you know, I think there's a lot of stuff that we'll say when this is all over that they could have touched more on, or they didn't touch at all, both good and bad.
We might just wrap up with a few final thoughts. My final thoughts on the last couple of episodes is that Michael Jordan's actually quite old school in the way that he's thinking. I know we're getting this from a 1998 perspective, and him being, as I said at the start, one of the owl lads, but like that footage of him in the dressing room asking for cigarettes with Scottie Pippen, obviously in jest, having a can of beer, and kind of pointing to the fact that modern coaches wouldn't allow you to do certain things is quite interesting. That a young coach would have us practicing today, he says, when he's getting into the golf cart on the golf course and stuff. I just don't think we quite appreciate just kind of the sensibilities that he had that weren't exactly of the new uber professional NBA era.
What about the getting out of the stadium with Scotty and getting into the bus? And
so good.
Like, there was nothing going to stop him getting his 3:30 tea time so he could have a beer, get into the golf cart.
It was the blowing of the horn. It was the beeping of the horn that took the biscuit there.
Incessant.
Like, I was all on board with, come on, like, we've all had to try and get someone. If you've ever tried to leave a party with someone who insists on saying goodbye to everybody, we understood the frustration of trying to get Scotty not to talk to the press. But nobody gets into their car outside the house and starts beeping the horn. But that's exactly what he did. That was a beautiful.
Well, if you have a tea time, Jarlath, you might have to go to them kind of places. Like, you know, it's rude, it's bad etiquette to be late in the golf course. I well know it, flying out lastminute.com trying to get to my tea time in Tralee. So it's golf etiquette to be on time, and you could tell nothing was going to stop him getting Scotty out. Like, even Scotty kind of laughing, kind of going, "Hey guys, sorry I can't talk to you, but Mike needs to go." Like, you know,
so
like
you
Scotty
mentioned at the top Tralee Golf Course is where you touched the hand of Michael Jordan, correct?
Yes.
Do you want to tell that story? Because I don't think you've told that story before. But
we were in school, and I don't know how we were in school. Like, I don't know. We were in school. I don't know how we heard. We were sitting there, and something got to me. Michael Jordan's out in Barrow Golf Course. Somebody's dad told somebody, told a teacher who told somebody or whatever. But it got around the school anyway. So I immediately just put my hand up and said I had to go to the toilet, like, you know, whatever, and just walked out. You know,
literally
no
on hearing it, you stopped and said, "Excuse me."
On hearing it, I was gone. I was on my bike and with a buddy of mine, and out we cycled 10 or 12 kilometres out to Tralee Golf Course. We weren't members of the golf course. It's, you know, it was kind of, you know, members only kind of signs on the gates and that kind of stuff or whatever. Obviously, probably around Jordan coming or whatever. So you can creep down by the beach and kind of climb up on the rocks and then get up onto around the third tee box is where or the second tee box I think was where I saw him, and I was just, you know, taken aback at the size of him. And I don't know if you've ever played Tralee Golf Club, but the second is a par 5 by the ocean. You know, you hit it out straight and then it's kind of dog-leg right, but they were giving Jordan the line because he was obviously a baseball player, so he could hit the shit out of it. So I remember the caddy, who was actually a guy who I went on and worked with in the Greyhound Bar, who I was working with in the Greyhound Bar, but a year later was a guy called Donny Hoolan, who's dead now, God rest him. But Donny was telling Michael, out over there, like, you know, out over the line of the hump, like, which is way off line, but like obviously if you can hit it 350 yards or meters, that's the line to take on. And he smoked this thing, like, you know. And I remember he used them words after he hit it. He's like, "Oh, it smoked that one," and he just started walking back. And I just remember seeing this golf ball travel, and I never saw a golf ball travel this far before. And I was kind of like going, "How is the ball still going?" And yeah, we just followed him around.
How far away were you from him at this point? And are you, as I picture you, in a bush, looking over?
Exactly. That's exactly how I am. And at one stage, I was probably about 15 feet from him, and I just couldn't believe the size of him. And he was black, like, you know, the way he's kind of, you know, he was jet black. Like, I was like, "Oh, this guy looks the coolest guy I've ever seen in my life." He had a big gold diamond earring in. He had a cigar out. He was just on kind of and like Tralee is such a good golf course. Then he's probably there, kind of going like, "This place is unbelievable." And yeah, I followed him around for the 18 holes, and as he was passing by the bus, made a glom for the sleeve of his jacket as he was going into the bus, and took pictures of him going into the bus. And I remember we got our bikes thrown into a fella's boot who drove us in to town afterwards. And as Jordan's bus was passing my mother's house, I took a picture of Jordan right outside my house. And for about 3 or 4 years after that, like, I used to come out and I'd be shooting out the back, and then I'd walk out the driveway and I'd see the main road, and I'd be like, "Geez, Jordan passed. He looked in here at this house. Like, he could have seen my ring." Do you know what I mean? So it was, yeah, but like, that was, you know, I'd say coming over to Ireland and playing the Links golf. Was it? Might have been later than that.
Yeah.
I'd say I was 14. I'd say it might have been 98, 99, I'd say.
Right. So your house could make an appearance in The Last Dance.
Yeah, if they follow the road to the golf club anyway, there'll be a few sightings of me, like a US Marine commando looking in over glass bushes and stuff.
Rehearsing lines from White Men Can't Jump.
Yeah. Tell us about that, Kieran. Is this the start of a new TikTok career that's going to take you to the next level?
No, I'm not a big fan of TikTok, but I saw a guy doing a movie scene on it like recently, about a week ago. So I was bored yesterday, and I downloaded it yesterday morning. I was up early with the kids, and, you know, got them to breakfast, and they were watching Peter Rabbit or something like that for like two 20-minute episodes. So I was like, okay, it's 40 minutes to do something. So I was downloading it and trying to figure it out and trying to learn how to work it. I wouldn't be technically great that way. So but yeah, then I came across the White Man Can't Jump, and I was like, yeah, this is kind of perfect. I know a White Man Can't Jump. I could sit down and I'd recite the whole movie for you, every line by every single character. I watched it so much when I was young. Yeah, I'd even get the Jeopardy questions right if I watched White Man Can't Jump, because I know the answers.
So the best scene in White Man Can't Jump has to be the fella Raymond holding up the shop with the gun to get money to play.
Give me all your money. Give me all your money.
Raymond, is that you? Raymond.
Nah, man, this ain't Raymond.
Yeah, all time. That's another podcast altogether, lads. Top 10 basketball movies.
Absolutely. Like, so I was.
Well, we're going to have loads of time, lads. There won't be too much live sport.
The timing of the shot was off to a T in the video.
Yeah. That was the hardest part. Some people might say with my shooting ability that making the shot was the hardest part, but it wasn't. It was to get the timing right of it hitting the ring. But I'd say I did about 7 or 8 takes. I'd say.
That's not bad.
So I knew the words, so it was just about getting the timings right and the turns and the actions to try and make it look that it was actually going on. I suppose as well, having the crack with that. So yeah, it was good fun. It's got big love online. So look, once people are happy, once we can keep people smiling during this COVID-19, there's no harm.
That's it. Well, I for one welcome our new TikTok overlord here on Off the Bull. Listen, Charlotte, Ronan, Kieran, thanks a million for hopping on this week, and hopefully some more good stuff next week from the last.
Can I say one thing first?
Yeah, go for it.
Just before we finish, Jerry Krause, again, I think massive gains late on in the episode by building up Dan Marley to Jordan.
Yeah.
That he's a great defensive player. I think it was a master stroke. I think he knew what he was doing all the time, telling Jordan Dan Marley's a great defensive player. They knew they were going to face the Suns at some stage. Yeah. Phoenix were in the Western Conference Finals in the early 90s a few times. They were a coming team. They got Barkley. Everybody knew they were going to be there. Jerry Krause, masterstroke, telling Jordan that Dan Marley is the best thing since sliced pan, and then Jordan goes out and burns them for 55.
Also, how many? If I could say one thing, smoking cigars, like. What? You're a professional athlete. You can't be smoking.
Well, you don't inhale cigars is the technique, I think, Charlotte. But I'll tell you a very funny one before we go. We were in the Bahamas on a Kerry team holiday, and we were after winning the All Ireland or whatever, and we were out and we were in this kind of Bahama kind of a place where it was like little shanty sheds, but every one of them was a family's bar, and there was like 20, and the goal was that we'd have a drink in every one of the bars, and we'd leave loads of tips and keep all the locals happy. It was a real local spot. But we bought 4 cigars in the first place. We were in big, massive cigars, and we gave them out, me, Michal Cork, Seamus Scanlon, and somebody else, but we were smoking cigars and we were having the crack. And by the time we got to about 17 to 18 pub fellas were fairly well on it now, and it was trying to hold bodies up and keep everything going in the one motion up the kind of town or the village or whatever. And I met Seamus Scanlon outside the pub, and he was smoking the butt of the cigar, and he was taking the biggest inhales ever, and he'd suck it right down into the lungs, and then he'd blow it out, and he turned over to me and he goes, "Star, there's fierce smoking in these cigars." I go, "Scan, you're not supposed to inhale them." "Ah, fuck yeah, Jesus, my chest is burning." So cigars, I don't know, they did smoke a lot of them. I don't know, they're obviously not inhaling them. I don't know how bad that is for you, but certainly cigars are a very cool thing back in the day.
Yeah.
Oh, and just quickly while the lads mentioned the Suns finals. So, obviously, Charles Barkley, a bit of a hidden MVP in these 2 episodes. I thought he was pretty funny in his limited screen time. Barkley, unbelievable. And he tells a great story about Chuck Daly coming over to him in Dream Team practices. And Barkley top scored for the Dream Team in 92. And he came over to him and said, "Chuck, you're the second best player I've ever seen." And at this point, Barkley thought he was the best player ever. And he said, "Who's the best?" And he pointed at Jordan. And he never bought it. Barkley never bought it until those finals when the Bulls eventually overcame the Suns. But Kieran, I just want to get your technical breakdown, please. That Paxson shot that wins the series, right? Why did Grant not just lay that ball up? Did he not have a clear run?
I don't think they were down 2, so the layup ties it, but I don't think he's at a great angle. I think he's very side on the basket. I don't think he's an angle to go off the glass. And when he gets it and turns,
also Pax is wide open.
But is that
but there's guys like Jordan's after driving down the lane, so I'm sure there's bodies coming down the lane. So when he grabs that, just gets his bearings, I'd say you can see pressure coming from this side, and he just turns and kicks it out.
Triangle, baby.
And also,
I think
But like just from the
it is
outside,
a good point, though, Ron.
it looks like a higher percentage shot though, just the way it played out. But also, Danny Ainge, why does he not run out and try and block the shot? Paxton gets a clear shot. Like
can't get there. Can't get there in time.
He didn't even try.
I know you can't get there. I always have this talk.
Put your hand up.
Teams. Yeah, I always talk about this with our teams that, you know, if you're in some kind of defense and you're caught or something happens and the ball is kicked to somebody, never just stand there and look at them, because that's just the easier shot. Even if you're never going to get there and you make a charge running low at his midriff while he's jumping, you might get in his eye line, you might put him off a bit. And I always tell fellas to scramble to a guy if he's open on the 3-point line, never just stand there, because I think to standing there with a shooter, any bit of a decent shooter, like you see these guys in the NBA these days that shooting in a warm-up, they don't miss in a warm-up. Like these, and the average of 3-point shooters are sitting out there in the warm-up wide open and they do not miss a three. So
yeah, one thing to pull up for next week is the number of 3-point shots that are taken today versus
reckless.
Ridiculous.
It is horrendous.
I think the Suns were this great 3-point shooting team. Like Marley had 3, and I think they only had 1 in the second half of game 4. I think they had 6 in the triple overtime game. You know, and this is with Thunder Dan, who were all built up like he was Steph Curry at the time. You know, we love Thunder Dan Marley, a white guy out there shooting threes, and he was brilliant. But like, you know, there's no comparison, and that's the bothering thing about the whole comparisons about Jordan versus if he was playing now. And we said it already. If Jordan was playing now, he'd be one of the best 3-point shooters in the league, and he'd also be unstoppable mid-range, and he's unstoppable going to the basket. If he got his 3 patting it down with his defensive abilities, he's still the best player in the league right now. If he was anywhere near his prime, it's like he's better than all of them.
Yeah, it's very true.
I just thought it was interesting. Paxton himself says here, I wasn't supposed to get the ball in that play. So I presume it actually was supposed to be Grant to just go in and lay that ball.
No, it wasn't supposed to be Grant running. It was supposed to be Jordan, but he went down and he got quadruple teamed. So that play is drawn for Jordan. It's not drawn for Horace Grant. Michael didn't come out in the timeout going, okay, Horace, you get over here.
No, it's funny because with the Steve Kerr one in is it 97? When that was drawn up in the timeout, where it's like, right, Steve, you're getting the ball, whereas Paxton was probably the most surprised player on the court to be getting.
In fairness, Paxton was 91 as well.
No. You've got that all fucked up. It was meant to be Jordan taking the Kerr shot. Kerr made a joke about the fact that it went to him. Mike said to him in the timeout, "Be ready."
Yeah,
that's all that happened there.
What about 91?
That Ainge didn't make a run at him because he knew we're fucked. Pax got the ball. He doesn't miss these. And you know, there's that moment of absolute.
You still got to run though. In that kind of a game, Jarlath, there's no excuse for not somebody making a charge. It's life or death.
To me, there's no excuse for missing foul shots in the NBA. To me, I find the foul shot percentages, particularly at that time, like I remember my own percentages
foul shots are hard.
were better than some of the NBA players, and I know they're more tired playing any 2-game season, but really. It's a fucking free go at the basket.
It's not. There's fuck all free about it. You're standing there by yourself. Everybody's staring at you. You have to try and make the free throw that you should make. It's like the 5-foot putt, Jarlath, and you don't have 1,000 people standing around the green in every 5-foot putt you take. And I tell you, if you did, your percentages should be higher.
Even then, the percentages should have been higher. And Shaq was a fucking disgrace for what he shot.
He was chucking the ball with one hand. Will you stop?
Jarlath Regan officially better than John Stockton in 1997, for example.
Thank you,
lads. If that's everything, we're going to wrap it up. But as I say, more good stuff for The Last Dance coming your way next week. What are we into? Episode 7 and 8. So the potentially penultimate. We might do a bit more after. Off the Ball coming your way next Tuesday, as ever. Make sure to tweet the lads if you've got any shouts, any opinions on the last couple of episodes of The Last Dance, and we'll get to them next week. Bye bye for now.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.